Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. You can even say it's our show on some level because I can't have this show if you don't exist to watch this show. And I want to thank you for being here to watch this show. It is early on a Friday morning. I don't know what you are doing in your morning. I hope you are having a damn good one. But whatever you're doing, I'm glad you're here with me, us together, as we deal with the difficulties of this life. Look, if you guys dig this show, give it a like. I know it's presumptive. You can wait 10, 20 minutes if you want to see if you like it and then you give it your like, but definitely support the content. You can do so through PayPal, Patreon, if that matters, Super Chats, or you get the like button, subscribe button, and definitely hit the button so you will get your notifications. Let's get into the show. Yesterday, something super interesting happened to me. So I am trying to figure out how to get this set up in order to take phone calls. All right. As I'm trying to get this set up to take phone calls, I go back to my old Google line. And going through my Google line, I go through my Google line, and I realize I have a bunch of messages on that Google line of people who from an old show was contacting me. And apparently was looking at my phone number when I resumed doing my show again in order to reach out to me. Now, I hadn't seen it. I wasn't aware of it. I didn't know it existed. And yet there are a ton of phone calls behind the scenes. Now, I'm not supposed to show this. And I can get in a lot of trouble for revealing who called me. But I think it will be good for the show for me to show, even though I am under great stress and difficulty in potentially showing this. But I love my audience that much where I'm willing to let you in on stuff that is taking place behind the scenes. I get this phone call.
Hello, this is once and future President Donald Trump, the man that took Kamala Harris to the woodshed in last week's presidential election. She's not very smart. Not very smart. Not very smart at all. I'm calling for Garland Thomas from Fault Lines on Radio Sputnik. He's a black African American. Call me back.
Donald Trump called me. Donald Trump called me. Now, some of the language he's using here is disturbing, but I'm going to play it anyway. And all things being equal with this phone call, he has certain wrong impressions of the world, but I'm going to let it play nonetheless. This is, let's let it continue.
Hello, this is future President Donald Trump, the man that won 3 presidential elections in a row. No man has ever won so much, Garland. The fate of the nation is at stake, the fate of the world. Call me back. Call me back. Call me back immediately. Also, I have started watching your morning show. Good work.
He likes my show. He likes my show. Let's keep going.
Garland, why are you calling yourself Jamal Thomas? You are confusing me. You are confusing me greatly. By the way, I'm eating fried chicken legs and Fruit Loops while enjoying your show. I still need you to call me. It is important. It is very, very important. I need. Jumping, Jesus Christ. I am sorry. I thought that was going to be silent but deadly. It surprised me, Garland. Surprised me greatly. I could not stop it. It was too powerful to hold back. Hate on what the hell was in that bucket of gravy. Oh, God, I think I crapped myself. Call me back. The woodshed and...
That is disturbing. That is disturbing. Ugh. Apparently, something he was eating didn't go well with the president-elect. Let him finish. I mean, that's pretty disgusting. But
what the hell was in that bucket of gravy? Oh, God, I think I crapped myself. Call me back. There is a national security emergency that only you can solve. Do you understand me? National security, it's imperative, it's big. I tell you, big, humongous, tremendously large, it's fatter than Chris Krispy Kreme Chrissy. Will you answer your nation's call to make America great again? Marco assured me this line is secure, very, very secure. If you listen to this message, you agree to take what I am about to tell you to your grave. You will be arrested, and I will personally urinate on your mother. Miss Thomas is a pleasant woman. very pleasant, but I will empty my bladder on her. I know that sounds bad, very, very bad, but I'm desperate. National security is at stake. Only you, the voice that was so subversive and pragmatic that the Biden administration removed you from the air. I was against that decision, against it completely. Look, Garland, Netanyahu is me by the balls. The fat criminal hand is gripping my balls as we speak. I can't push his hand away. He's squeezing my balls. Do you understand me, Garland? I need your help to get his hands off my balls. There is a videotape I need to recover. Only you can help me get it. I was invited to Puff Daddy's home several years ago before becoming president. Puff gave me some grape soda. Next thing I know, I wake up naked wearing a gorilla mask with an IV in my oil, covered in oil. I was slick as an eel. I was bewildered. I look around, grab my ass. Puffy, J-Lo, Lou Ferrigno, Batman, and a guy in a Little Mermaid costume were fornicating with each other. It was disgusting. I ran out the door butt naked, still wearing the gorilla mask. My gigantic penis was swinging in the wind. Garland, my ass hurt for weeks. Puffy Daddy got the goods on me, Garland. He got the goods. Also, do not believe Obama and Stormy. My penis is tremendous, absolutely beautiful and tremendous. When I turned 60 years old, I had my penis surgically encased in solid gold. That is right, Garland. I have a 92-carat gold penis. It sparkles in the sun. I beat a mugger to death with it in Moscow 30 years ago. The cops were after me, but I jumped in the frigid water to escape. One moment, Garland. Jumping Jehovah, Netanyahu is texting me. He wants me to toss his salad. Christ, Garland, help me get his fat, disgusting criminal hands off my balls. My balls are tremendous, but they are fragile, Garland, very, very fragile. Call Putin for me. I will give you Mexico. You can have it, Garland. Tell your content Sputnik to call Putin and tell him to use the secret technology he recovered from that alien crash in Siberia to destroy the recording. Please call him, call him, call him, call immediately. Ask Putin to help make America great again. I am trying to fight the globalist, Garland. When Puffy's house was raided, the tapes were taken and sold to power brokers in Washington. A week later, a box was delivered to my office, about this wide and about this long. I opened the box, and there it was, the gorilla mask. They know Garland. They got the goods on Trump. I will call back in a couple of weeks. Help me make America great again. Call Putin.
Donald, hurry up. Kanye has stolen a book of matches again. He is threatening to set Bobby on fire. Hey, is Jamal Thomas, host of the best damn morning show covering news, politics internationally and domestically? Tell him good job fixing his sound. Tell him good job fixing his sound. Tell him he's right about everything.
Well, if Elon Musk said I'm right about everything, I must be right about somewhat of everything. That is fascinating. Marco Rubio apparently lied to him, and it seems that the president thinks my name is Garland Thomas. I don't know what to say. I mean, there's a horrible perception that apparently I have contacts still at Sputnik, that I have the ability to somehow get in contact with Putin and help him with this tape. I don't have those contacts, by the way. I know people think that. They used to think that all the time just because we worked on the network, but that's not really true. And it disturbs me a bit that he doesn't know my name is Garland. But Musk apparently knew, because Musk, if you notice, he's at Jamal Thomas, the best damn morning show, covering news, politics, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that. There's that. Look, if he calls back, I will let you all know. I was shocked as shit to get that message from Trump. He clearly needs help with something. Apparently, Netanyahu has his hands around his balls, and Donald Trump can't get them off by himself. Now, if there's any way I can help the president in this capacity, I would, but I have no capacity to do this at all. And for that matter, he is Elon Musk. I don't see why he doesn't get Elon Musk to help him out. So there's that. There's that. I was laughing my ass off at that clip. Clearly, the president has difficulties. He clearly has difficulties. And it sounds like there's a bowel misfunction there that he has to really get checked. But there is good government health care with the job of the president, and I'm pretty sure he would get that working straight. If he calls back, I will let you know. Hopefully, there's no repercussions for me exposing that message from Trump. But we will see. We will see. I have a damn good show for you today. It is going to be jam-packed. I need to figure out how to get in contact with Mark Frost. He is supposed to be here at 8 o'clock. There's going to be a tech issue. I know it in advance, but we're going to work that out. This morning, I have a gentleman to have a conversation about what's taking place right now in Ukraine. Arnard Bertrand, I believe the last name is. Wilmer Leon, Professor, Dr. Wilmer Leon is going to be here 8:30. Mark Frost is going to be at 8 o'clock, 9:15. I'm going to have Esteban Carrillo. He's going to be giving me information about what's taking place on the ground in Lebanon. Next week, I'm going to try to get Lath back. Lath is on the ground. I'm not sure if Esteban is currently on the ground. I believe he's in Canada right now. I'm just happy that he's safe. At this point, I don't think anybody in Beirut is all that safe. So I'm glad he is in safety. But of course, he still has connections back in Beirut and in Lebanon that he can give us context on what is taking place. So, damn good show. A few things that have come up. Donald Trump has shaken up, you could say, Washington with many of the picks that he's brought down. Now, some of these people, as I pointed out, were lunatics. Hegseth being one of the main ones. But a few actually like John Ratcliffe. He's a UFO guy. I don't know his failings, but I know on the UFO stuff he's good. And yes, that's short-sighted of me, but fair enough. I could be elucidated later on. Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence. Get it, Tulsi? They hate her. I love her to death because they hate her so much. RFK. RFK is functioning. Where is he? Where is he? There he is. Healthy Human Services. RFK will be heading Health and Human Services. Now, the collective shit fit in Washington from these two alone could power a rocket to Mars by itself. It is fantastic. I have serious qualms with RFK from the standpoint of his position on Israel. But in general, if that wasn't part of his character, I would actually like him. He's competent. The things that he said make sense in a way that many times it doesn't necessarily make sense for the rest of the people in Washington when they're going along a particular path. He's a corporate lawyer, and his framing of the world is through that lens of the corporate lawyer that is distrustful of corporations. Now, his main argument is effectively that government organizations that are supposed to be protecting human health have been captured by corporate interests. Now, let's be honest. We watched, three airplanes from Boeing fall out the sky, killing hundreds of people. Why did they fall out the sky? They fell out the sky because Boeing wanted to maximize its profit. And it wanted to maximize its profit against its competitor because it couldn't compete on even terms from an engineering standpoint. So Boeing takes a shortcut, updates the engines to make them bigger so the plane can fly farther so it can compete with Airbus, the 747 MAX, without telling the pilots that technology and software would be required to keep the plane stable in the air. And so the pilots were fighting the airplane and software, which ends up tanking several other airplanes. I believe it was 2, killing 300 to 400 human beings, purely for corporate interests, purely because they wanted to maximize profit. The FAA effectively stood by and allowed them to do this because the FAA was effectively captured by Boeing and that particular industry and wasn't doing its job and wasn't on the watch. Now, if that's true for airplanes, what about food? What about medicines? What about vaccines? Now, they used to use the smear, he's vaccine hesitant. But the reality of it is, there are plenty of interviews with RFK where he's describing and explaining the very thing that they're smearing him with. And his argument is, these things have not been tested in a way that other drugs are tested. That's wrong. And he's been able to even put a knife in Fauci on this very specific point in order to prove his point that these are not being tested. Now, they would say, well, all of these things are safe. Okay, fair enough. His argument is if they're safe, test them. They hate him for that. They hate him because he ran in the race. And his family has been somewhat against him on all of this stuff. But the fact that the mainstream media is freaking out, and many of these people are freaking out, when his point of view is effectively corporations have been able to take control of our food and safety, and we need to take that control back. And he goes with this notion of Americans dying younger, how we get illnesses and diseases, and how those things are directly related to the diet and the things that are allowed in our foods versus the things that are not allowed in foods in other countries. I have zero issue with this pick. Washington needs to be shaken up. And damn it, he's one of the people to do it. Let's bring in our guests. There we are. We are joined with Anard Devlin. He is an international lawyer specializing in international criminal law and participated in in defense of former President Saddam Hussein, along with former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark, in the wake of the Caesar Act. He documented illegal sanction regime imposed on Syria while living in Damascus. He is the author of Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of American Political Consensus. Anard, welcome to the show, man. How you doing this morning? You doing all right?
I'm doing fine, Jamal. Thank you for your invitation and your gracious introduction.
No, man, thank you for joining me. I looked you up when I made contact with you. I want to thank Jeremy for this contact, and I really appreciate you joining me on this. I have been fascinated by the collective freak out that has been taking place since Trump has gotten into office. And part of that freak out has to do with his point of view on this issue of Ukraine. Basically, we need to stop these wars. Now, Biden, in fact, I'm going to show you this. I want to get your take on this. This is Blinken recently, because again, from their point of view, Trump said he's going to end the war. Zelensky is somewhat freaked out because he's going to end the war. Joe Biden's project that has been taking place over the last several years is coming to an end potentially. Blinken, despite losing the election, meaning the issue of Ukraine was litigated in the election with Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris and Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. They lost that. And even when you ask people, who do you trust more so in foreign policy, Donald Trump came up higher than Kamala Harris. Like I said, this was litigated. Despite it being litigated, this was Blinken. I believe this was yesterday.
That Ukraine has what it needs to effectively defend Ukraine. As we're working to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to effectively defend itself, the United States continues to step up. We've obligated just recently and pushed out the door another $8 billion in security assistance for Ukraine. That was in September. Another almost $500 million just a few weeks ago. And President Biden is committed to making sure that every dollar we have at our disposal will be pushed out the door between now and January 20th.
No, it's not going to matter. I mean, all things being equal, the American public effectively said, we're sick of this war. I mean, by virtue of electing Trump. And Joe Biden is still saying, we're going to give every dollar that we have at our disposal. We're going to give billions. We're going to get billions out the door before Trump gets in. Is it going to matter that they get that money? And, well, let's ask that one first. And then I want to move to the next point first. But give me your take on this. Is any of this money going to make a difference in the grand scheme of things from the standpoint of the war?
Well, to make a long story short, no, it's not going to make any difference at all whatsoever. For the simple reason that Ukraine, or what's left of it, is running out of manpower to begin with. They had their shot and they miscalculated heavily. We were mostly in presence of an informational war, to be sure, from the get-go.
Yeah.
And all the military development on the ground were carefully obstructed from the not only the American public but the Western public at large. It's interesting that you showed this clip from departing Secretary of State Blinken, bearing on throwing more money to the problem. Since this morning, there was a clip made on the train back from Brussels to Paris by a French politician.
Yeah.
Who understands very well the Ukraine situation as well. And he was trying to basically sensitize the French public this time that just as you mentioned, Donald Trump was invested with a mandate at the very least to put an end to this money laundering operation, was explaining to the French people that in their back, something close to 12.8 billion euros was being sent to Ukraine, even though the French economy is teetering on the verge of collapse. We might be facing a takeover, in terms of what happened in Greece back in 2010, this time for France. And that we're being told by the Prime Minister, who used to be an EU commissioner himself, so he's kind of an insider. that we need to cut down on spending, and this implies cutting down on Medicare, healthcare, which, coincidentally, is 10 billion euros.
Wow.
So there you have it. So it's a problem, of course, in Washington, but it's also a problem in Brussels. And in the wake of Trump, what we're seeing is actually a doubling down on some of those usual suspects, i.e. Macron and Starmer, which we found out this past Monday were angling to try to get sleepy Joe Biden to approve the use of ATACMS, long-range missile system, deep into Russian territory,
Right.
which, as we know, is a red line, a major red line at that. So when somebody said that those next 65, 67 days now left until inauguration are probably, arguably, the most dangerous period of these past 2.5 years, 3.5 years, you have to take it very seriously. Those people they don't want it to end. Everybody, I mean, some of those people, most of them involved in the Project Ukraine are making out with a huge loot. And to the extent some of them are getting the memo, quote unquote, it's interesting to look at the cryptocurrencies basically jumping up on the graphics, because it shows that, I'm not saying this is the essentially the sole reason for the uptick, but a lot of people are trying to evacuate the loot from Ukraine, and crypto is the
Trying to get the
method
money
they're
out.
using.
Wow. I mean, we spent nearly $300 billion. So I would imagine if it was a leaky bucket, that's a lot of, pennies that are falling from that bucket. Give me your take on, going back 2 years ago, I made this point in saying that Russia went in with 150,000 troops and were able to take 20% territory. And well, they were able to effectively win every battle, even though they didn't have enough manpower in order to kind of push further. And my reasoning on that was, Ukraine is going to lose this. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people dead, 20% territory gone. And I remember back then I asked the very basic question, what was it for? And I want to ask you that. What was all of this for? There were the Minsk agreements, 1 and 2. There were Istanbul agreements, both of which would have ended the conflict, all of which were tossed to the side. What was all of this death, carnage for? Give me your take on this.
Well, I would say in one word, hubris. I think a lot of people in the State Department, for whatever reason, we're not going to get into the psychology of those people, but they really internalized the very notion that the Russians were basically not up to the task, and that NATO would basically use Ukraine as a battering ram,
right,
and implement the RAND paper that was released in summer 2019, which bore on undermine entire Russian capacities at its borders, including Syria, including Ukraine, but also including the Caucasus. So, we're dealing with people who basically do not allow alternate viewpoints, and so you create an echo chamber, and this reinforces the cognitive bias. And in the end, basically, when they started being confronted to enforcing development, they kept doubling down. This is what happens with the people we have, whether they are in NATO or in Brussels at the EU level. We're dealing with ideologues and not really pragmatics and realist people.
right.
Problem is, they never want to engage in self-introspection and call into question some of the prejudice that informs their opinion about how the world works. And so, bearing on this fundamental premise, what we have is a bunch of people who somehow are in denial and consider that the problem ought to be dealt with by throwing money at it or by doubling down on sending any kind of weapon system, hoping, doing the same thing and hoping for a different result, which some might have said that it is the very, very definition of insanity.
Insanity,
And I guess this is where we are now.
So all of this was purely done for geopolitical expansion. Like, all of this talk about it, an unprovoked war, all of that is nonsense. All of this was effectively done purely because the West believe Ukraine can be a pivot point for Russia. We can put it on the border, and Russia can't do anything to stop us from doing so. They effectively believe their own propaganda.
Yes, it has something to do also with the Russophobia, that we've been experiencing the last few years, to be sure, the last 2.5, 3 years,
Mhm.
in proportion that are completely wild. Anything that bears on Russian culture, Russian contribution, Russian music, Russian composers, Russian writers is, has been up to now at least cancelled. And so this idea that people who are running Russian Federation and obviously are concerned about the security and well-being of their populations
Yeah, of
would have
course.
somehow admissible claims to wanting to have security concerns addressed. This is somehow considered like um, some kind of antinomics in
Yeah,
Washington. Like, those people are not human beings. We don't look at them as human beings, as sentient, thinking people who are entitled to have their own viewpoints being taken into account. Therefore, to get around this problem, this expression of alternate viewpoints, you basically throw ad hominem arguments at them, and you try to basically deny them their very humanity. And
yeah,
this
they
is a
don't
very
see it.
dangerous perspective.
Yeah, I agree with you. They don't see it. There's no ability to look at it from the other person's point of view. And I'm assuming that's just political, right? It's not about right or wrong. For example, if Russia knocked over the government of Mexico, if they put in weapons, intelligence services, if they had all of these spies and whatnot in order to gin it up and get it angry, if they built up a military on the border of the US, I don't believe for a moment that the US will say, well, Mexico is an independent country, it can do whatever it wants. And I don't believe for a moment that any of them would accept that premise. And yet Russia's supposed to accept it on the border of Ukraine. The thing that shocked me more than anything else about this, though, was the willingness of Europe to take pain for this project. For example, the German government has just collapsed. Scholz is going to have elections coming up, and it collapsed over this issue of giving money to Ukraine. As you pointed out, France has a deficit in and of itself. Now, these are two of the powerhouses of Europe. I mean, the populations can't be okay with this. Like, they can't be okay with this. It's hearing Annalena Baerbock arguing that they had to cut government services so they can give money to Ukraine is outrageous. What is going on domestically in Europe over this issue? And is there, let's say, agitation and a pushing against governments for going in this direction with this project?
Well, to be sure, people are feeling the pinch right now economically, and everybody knows that one of the main reasons why the situation is getting increasingly worse day by day is that all the money is going to Ukraine.
Hmm.
But the problem is, in as far as France is concerned, we're not, seemingly we're not seeing any coordinated attempt. We may have like occasional protest organized on Saturdays,
Yeah,
when people are off on the weekend. But what you would need is some kind of a
like a yellow vest.
taking a yes, a permanent 24/7 until the government backs down. And for the time being, we're not seeing this. So I guess the assumption is that there's still enough food in the fridge, and
Wow.
there's still enough games and circus to be to be looked at. And so for now, yeah, everything seems to be still okay.
What is the current
We'll
status?
see.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry. What's the current status on the ground in Ukraine, by the way? It's moved off the pages of the front pages, and I'm assuming it's off the front pages because, well, they're losing. And it's pretty much instantiated in the West at this point that Ukraine is losing. I mean, hell, we have articles where they're saying the front has collapsed. So this idea of a stalemate is out the window. What's the current status in the battlefield, on the ground in Ukraine, in the war?
Well, the Russian armed forces are eking out a new territorial gain day after day. They're just going about it very methodically.
Yeah.
Obviously, not wanting to espouse the shock and awe, U.S. Way of doing things. They're gonna have to live with those people after all, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
So, but for the time being, the Ukrainian armed forces, or what's left of it, are not really engaging the Russians in a way that we've seen, let's say, in Avdiivka or in Bakhmut. They are basically abandoning their positions, and basically the Russians are just creating new cauldrons everywhere they can, isolating the Ukrainian armed forces, and slowly but surely approaching a situation where if they take Prokrovsk, they will capture the hub of logistical hubs that allows supply lines to keep functioning. So this is where we want to be looking at now. This town called Prokrovsk. Once that falls, they'll be able to pretty much, I wouldn't say starve, but the main settlements of Kupiansk and Kramatorsk. And this is the beginning of the end, because then we could be looking at this coming winter, depending on what will happen on the diplomatic front with the incoming Trump administration. But in thus far as, it's a two-leg system. So diplomacy is only as successful as it produces results. If the fundamental premise is predicated on freezing the conflict and allowing elements to be put into place so that 20 years down the road we're back at it, Russia is not going to settle for this. They may decide to basically unleash the full power of their armed forces on the whole front and capture Kiev, because let's forget about it. It's all about denazification and demilitarization. It's very simple. Russia.
I see.
So they will not allow even like some kind of cosmetic change to take place, whereas Zelensky is replaced by someone even more, I would say, Nazi. It's out of the question.
Okay, no, that's super interesting, because it sounds like you're saying it's something. Okay, let me ask this in two ways. First, with Europe, and then I want to bounce back to Trump for a bit. But how is Europe dealing with this notion that Donald Trump is coming back? I mean, they were terrified of him winning the election. I mean, it was obvious. I mean, some of the comments that people were making in Europe was just outrageous. From your, do you think that if Trump does pull out, that Europe can cover the gap? Meaning, is Europe going to be left holding the bag on the issue of Ukraine?
Well, Europe is basically in a situation of its own doing. I mean, European elites, to be sure. And to the extent the Americans are basically calling it off, the EU elites are left on the hook. And they already said that they would provide, they would fill in the gap in terms of financing. So it's almost like they.
Do you really believe they
do
that?
There are talks about grabbing those $300 billion frozen Russian funds. So yeah, they're down serious about it. But in the end, reality will dictate whether or not this is a suitable policy. And for now, they have to be showing until the Biden administration is officially out of office. They have to give reassurances that they're still on the program. But by the time the Trump administration comes in, I'm betting we are going to see a different sound emanating from Brussels, and we can count on Orban and Robert Fico from Slovakia to somehow lead the charge in trying to deviate the EU packbot.
Okay. Yeah, well, they hate Orban and they hate Fico. But like you said, that may change when Trump come in. I'm curious from the other angle. Do you think Trump is really going to follow through with it? Or do you think the blob is going to, change Trump's point of view? But like, for example, Putin said one day, he said, when the president wins a race, there's a man in a black suit that comes in and effectively says, this is the way things are done. Now, Trump seems to be bucking that trend in the people that he's appointing for these positions. I mean, he just appointed Tulsi Gabbard for DNI. Tulsi Gabbard just put out a video saying that Ukraine needs to be a neutral country. So I guess my question is, do you think Trump is really going to follow through with what he's been saying in regards to ending the war? And I agree with you. Russia is not going to accept any ending of the war with the exception of on their terms. Like, I don't know what Trump has nothing at his disposal in real terms, short of going to some kind of major war with Russia, which would just be a complete bastardization of anything he said during the campaign. So assuming for the moment that they're legitimate on this, I guess my thing is there's some people who don't believe Trump is going to do this, that he's going to continue to give some money to Ukraine. Maybe the better question is, how do you think he would go about ending this if he does go through with ending this?
Well, it all depends how much obstacle they've put in his path by the time he takes office on January 28th, which is still some quite away from now. For the time being, we have this congressional provision inserted into the National Defense Authorization Act of 2024, which basically prevents any future president from calling into question the membership of the US into NATO. So this is an interesting aspect, keeping in mind that the president basically can decide to opt out of any kind of treaty. It doesn't need to be somehow bounded. There's a constitutional question here, to be sure. But one could think that the Supreme Court would basically wash its hands by saying it's a political question and the executive branch has complete latitude to opt out. So bearing on that, there's the issue of the financing from NATO member states. And Trump is going to probably use that card to de facto create a rift, which will, make somewhat neutralize or at least slow down NATO's programs for, the foreseeable future. We'll be hearing, to be sure, voices in Europe calling for a European army, but with what money and with what men? That's the real question.
Well, they're doing it now. Macron has been doing it for a while. I mean, he pointed out if this is going to be America first, maybe we should deal with our own security interests, which is not insane when you think about it. I mean, in real terms. But to be fair, I've never heard Donald Trump say anything about pulling out of NATO. If anything, he's tried to force them to pay more money.
Well, that's the way he presents it. Obviously, he can't just come right out and say we're opting out of NATO because obviously this imperial forever war model is just not working. But to be sure, if we somewhat try to guess what goes on in his mind, which is one of a pragmatic businessman, you will want to, wind down on on your sales and make sure that you reorient your resources in trying to catch up, if anything, on a weapon system in which you are 10 to 15 years behind. But he has to navigate, a blob that's been there for decades, that's very entrenched, and he has to really proceed cautiously, tread cautiously. So, hence the reason why he appointed Tulsi Gabbard as DNI, so she can ride shotgun and prevent any kind of funny business from being pulled, while he's first, implementing, choosing his team, getting things situated, and then begin to implement some kind of policy which may bring this whole Ukraine fiasco to an end. So we'll see. Right now, it's too early to say. We know there's been talk of a senior figure to be named as special envoy to the Ukraine conflict.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that.
We don't know who it might be. I mean, I would push for Jeffrey Sachs, but
oh man, I would love Jeffrey Sachs for that role. He's definitely experienced. He definitely has qualifications for it. He could definitely do it. Look, they say people are policy, right? And the person he puts into that role on some level is going to give some kind of context into what Donald Trump is thinking about that war. In fact, this is Tulsi Gabbard. Let me play this. I want to get your take on Gabbard's response because, again, they are screaming right now in D.C. John Bolton is losing his mind, and I love it because the people who are angry are the people who I don't like anyway. Like Rachel Maddow is screaming about this. John Bolton, Abigail Spangler. Spangler is a spook that's in Congress, basically somebody that worked for the CIA. All these people are complaining, oh my God, I can't believe that Gabbard is taking this role. Liz Cheney. I'm okay with this. They hate Tulsi Gabbard specifically because Tulsi Gabbard called out the fact that we were trying to knock over the government of Syria and got 500,000 people killed in the process. She also called out the Ukraine fiasco, as you call it, basically us knocking over the government of Ukraine and expanding NATO to the border of the country. They hate her for that. She got pushed out of the Democratic Party. It was part of that, but also part of the debate performance where she basically put a knife in Kamala Harris. But she came out, I believe this was yesterday, and she said this.
Presidents Putin, Zelensky, and Biden. It's time to put geopolitics aside and embrace the spirit of aloha, respect, and love for the Ukrainian people by coming to an agreement that Ukraine will be a neutral country, no military alliance with NATO or Russia, and therefore alleviate the legitimate security concerns of both US and NATO countries as well as Russia, because there'd be no Russian or NATO troops on each other's non-Baltic borders. This would allow the Ukrainian people to live in peace. Aloha.
Would Putin take that? Or would Russia or Moscow take that position? Because effectively, what that sounds like is this is what Russia's argument, right? You guys are expanding to our border. You've knocked over the government of Ukraine, and now you've put a ton of military on our border. This is unacceptable. Would that be acceptable as a position to start with?
Well, that sure would get people in Moscow very interested in sitting down and proceeding along those lines. I mean, this is basically what was put forward in late 2021, about a couple of months before the start of operations. There was a treaty draft which was submitted to Washington, which called for basically demilitarization of Ukraine, calling for that country to remain neutral and not be absorbed by NATO. And, that was a pretty simple proposition, but this was rejected out of hands. So to the extent, Tulsi Gabbard, is promoting what has been known to be acceptable for the leadership in Russia. We can only hope that she manages to press this issue on some of the most entrenched interests in Washington.
Yeah.
But as long as you have people like Newland at NED, she's still there. I mean, she might have resigned from her position as number 3 in state, but she's still there. We still have a lot of people in there. So I would somehow submit that you need to first cleanse all those federal agencies before you begin to contemplate initiating a policy on steady ground.
Yeah.
That's really the challenge here.
See, that's always the thing, right? How much power does a president have in the context of the system that the president is in? What do you think of Trump appointments up to this point? If you had to think of any kind of like a foreign policy, for example, apparently it was released yesterday that Elon Musk met with the Envoy ambassador, and they were having a conversation about bringing down hostilities in Iran. Now, that is fascinating when you think about it, because if you think about the people who Trump put into his administration, many of these people are hawks. I mean, you're talking about Marco Rubio, Hegelev, like these people are, bomb first, ask questions later. And yet there's this kind of odd propensity among some of the people, let's say like a RFK Jr. or a Tulsi Gabbard, that pulls against that instinct. How do you view the people that he's put in his administration up to this point? And by the way, I'm including Elon Musk into this because it seems like Musk has very much influence.
Well, Musk is a very fascinating personage, to be sure. But to the extent he practices public diplomacy, I'm all for it. I
Yeah.
mean, we all remember how Dennis Rodman used to pal around with the leader of North Korea 20 years ago and somehow contributed to setting the stage for high-level meetings. So you never want to underestimate the power of public diplomacy, and Musk is an innovator in that sense. He's someone who thinks out of the box, and we need people who think out of the box. I'm not saying he's 100% right on every single issue. Far
Yeah,
from
of
it.
course.
I
Of
still
course.
recall what he said about Bolivia.
That's
He's,
right.
we'll coup you if we need your lithium. But to the extent this is what we have, in Washington right now, Washington needs a spring cleaning. We need new thinking, bold thinking. We need to take into account that there's no going back to the unipolar world. This
Yeah.
is a done deal, and we need to take into account that there's three major poles of geopolitical power now.
Yeah.
And the US is perfectly able to somehow exploit the situation to its benefit if it takes into account that there's a new game in town now. But the US still had a lot of, I would say, assets, and it's respected for many more things. Its innovation, its energy, its vitality, its inventiveness, its ability to think out solutions when older societies are more encrusted. And so, I believe that there's possibilities, but we have to first take act that some people have to go
Let me ask you this.
because, they've been found out.
So
Their
one of my
policies are.
subscribers, he's asking a really good question. So as I pointed out when we first started, Russia had the Minsk agreements, 1 and 2. They had the Istanbul agreements. And all things being equal, before this conflict started, Putin, I always described him as like a preacher begging for people to come to Jesus. He is standing out saying, we need security guarantees. We need security guarantees. This situation is untenable for us. Meaning he was trying to make another deal to stop the conflict before it ever started. And the West just did not want to have any conversation about it. Could he even trust the deal that the West will come up with? Meaning, even if Donald Trump wanted to have a deal, let's say he was legitimately wanting to end the war, how could Russia trust any deal that the US comes up with? If you look at the JCPOA, they got rid of that. If you look at the Minsk agreements, they got rid of that. And with the Minsk agreements, there was this extra special bonus where Merkel comes out and said, we lied. We lied intentionally in order to ensure Ukraine can build up a military. So a bill or treaty that was supposed to stop a war was used to give time for Ukraine to build up a military to provoke a war. How on earth could Moscow trust anything that comes out of the US on any deal that is made or signed? Give me your take on that.
Well, obviously, trust has been undermined by years and years of broken promises, and the Russians are not naive enough to think that whatever deals emerges out of future negotiation, you have to take the Americans' words for it. But you gotta somehow give it a shot. That's the alternative is unthinkable. So you have to give a chance to diplomacy for diplomacy to work, and you have to basically at some point try to develop a relationship with somebody who is going to be representing the other side's interest. But you want to, as Reagan used to say, trust but verify.
But verify.
And
I guess my question is, how do you
want.
verify that situation? Like, how do you, like, for example, they stop the conflict. Russia gets to the Dnieper, Trump gets in, and they say, okay, Ukraine is going to be a neutral country. Okay, great. How do you ensure that Ukraine remains a neutral country? I mean, look at Taiwan. Taiwan is a really good example. You had the one China policy. The US says, we believe in the one China policy. And yet they fill Taiwan up with every weapon, gun, bullet that they can find and get their hands on. I guess my thing is, how would a country like Russia ensure that Ukraine remains neutral, regardless of any treaty or deal that the US signs? It's that part that I don't quite get.
Well, I would surmise that if we ask the opinion of the Ukrainian people after 2.5 years of slaughter, what it is that they want, they would opt out for the end of any kind of hostilities and
Yeah.
the end of being instrumentalized by any kind of any bloc. So what we would want to do is, this is my take on it, but we could
Mhm.
organize elections which are organized and coordinated jointly by Moscow and Washington, so that there's no room left for second guessing the outcome, and let the Ukrainian people decide. And
But the Russian
hopefully,
Federation, from their point of view, those breakaway regions are part of Russia. So the only regions that are going to be left are going to be more. Yeah, go into that for me. I mean, those regions from Russian point of view, those are Russian territory. That's Russian territory. I mean, part of any
yes,
deal is going to be that those Ukrainian soldiers leave, move out. So, okay, let me ask this in a
go
different
home,
way.
I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
then go home.
go.
Effectively,
Yeah.
go home.
Which is
Um,
basically what they want. I mean, they're being rounded up in the streets now. So I think they just want to go home. They understand deep down inside that it's over. There's
yeah.
nothing to do. You don't want to die for BlackRock.
Well, I imagine it's extremely demoralizing. I mean, you've been fighting all of these years. Um, you have lost territory. You've lost hundreds of thousands of human beings, and the U.S. said we're with you for as long as it takes. And then a new president gets in. Europe gets tired of paying the money for it. The German government collapses, and you realize, okay, for as long as it takes, it's going to be not very long. I would imagine it's very demoralizing if you're a Ukrainian soldier in this case. From your point of view, how do you think this ultimately ends, though? What does it look like when it ends? Is it a partition? Does Russia have to take all of Ukraine? Is it, how do you think this basically ends? It resolves itself.
Well, I mean, like you said, those former eastern region of Ukraine are not going back.
Right.
This is a done deal. This was done. They had a chance. Kiev had a chance to show itself to be a responsible legal authority over those regions, and they basically treated them like second-class citizens.
Yeah.
So the trust is fundamentally broken forever, and those people have decided they've exercised their right under UN Charter Article 1 to basically turn to Russia, and some would say go home,
Yeah.
and there's no going back on that. And as far as what's left of Ukraine, it all depends on the Ukrainian regime and its sponsors' ability to look at the situation for what it is, and call it a day. If they don't, they are likely to lose more territories. We see
Territory.
that Poland is already looking to grab, a chunk of Ukraine. Hungary as well.
Do you
Romania
really think they'd
also
do
has.
that? I've heard that argument made that those countries were looking to basically take the decapitated remains of Ukraine into its own auspices. Do you really think they do that? In fact, would Russia even allow that? I mean, Russia's made this argument that if anything goes into West Ukraine, it's fair game.
Mhm.
I mean, that would be in war with NATO on some level, right? Or would it? I mean, give me your take.
No, because Ukraine is not part of NATO technically, so they cannot. We cannot anticipate a situation where NATO and Russia
Yeah.
officially, frontally comes into conflict. Nobody wants that, which is the whole point of having a proxy, to do your bidding.
Right.
Uh,
But if Poland goes into Western Ukraine, then Poland is
mhm.
technically part of the battlefield at that point. That's basically a
Yeah,
NATO country going into Ukraine.
well, they were going to Ukraine to essentially gain, uh, retrieve what they consider they've contributed to the war effort, for no positive outcome. That's my take on it. And so it would be kind of what we saw with Poland in the 18th century. The country will be essentially partitioned, and there will be essentially just a district of Kiev left with all the representative. The Russian might have a presence there, the Poles, the Hungarians, and we may have some kind of a neutral, like Berlin was, this kind of this international city. That's a possibility. It doesn't have to be like this, but if we keep on the current trajectory, it's not unlikely that it would happen.
Wow. This has
So
been
it's I guess it's a race against time, as far as the incoming Trump administration is concerned.
I have to be honest with you. I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't feel like I had a dog in this hunt one way or the other. And so I kind of just called it balls and strikes. If nothing else, though, I hope he ends this war. Like, it's hard for me to wrap my head around 500,000 people dying for no reason, like for no good reason at all, purely because people, fat cats, decides they want to invade other countries and use our tax dollars for geopolitical expansion. Like, that's outrageous to me. And then to like cover it with all of these lies of unprovoked war. Russia is, trying to take over all of Europe, and the stuff that they've been saying over the course of these last several years. Yeah, if Donald Trump, whatever he is, if he can come in and end this war, God bless him for doing so. I'll take it. Arnaud, man, thank you for this. I really appreciate you joining me. Arnaud Devillet. How do I pronounce your last name, by the way? Is it Devillet?
Devillet. And the first name is Arnaud.
Arnaud, thank you. Arnaud, okay. Arnaud Devillet.
No problem.
He's an international lawyer.
Thanks, Jamal.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate you joining me. He's an international lawyer specializing in international criminal law and participated in the defense of former President Saddam Hussein, along with former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark. In the wake of the Caesar Act, he documented the illegal sanction regime imposed on Syria while living in Damascus. He is the author of Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of the American Political Consensus. And say what you will about Trump. Like I said, I didn't vote for him, but if he ends this war, God bless him for doing so. Thank you, Arnaud. Have a good one, man. All right. I am going to take a quick break, and I am going to get in contact with Mark Frost. I'm going to invite him onto the show, and we are going to have a conversation about Donald Trump and what his plans are, anyway, will do. Because keep in mind, Donald Trump's argument is he's going to bring back jobs. All right, how are you going to do that? Because keep in mind, the entire point of jobs leaving has more to do with capitalistic realities of things. I'm a company. I want to maximize my profit. I'm making a certain amount of money just being here in the United States. Let's say $1 billion. I pay my workers $15 to $20 an hour. Hey, legislation has been passed. I can now move my company to China, and I can pay that guy $3 an hour. And on top of that, I can import it back into America for free. And now I'm making $50 billion. My world is great. No, that worker, he's lost his job. Fair enough. But hey, I got that worker in China making $2 more. Am I not merciful? Meaning, I don't know how you change that. So the way that Donald Trump seems to be thinking about changing it is, I'm going to put tariffs on those things. If they try to leave America, tariff. If they, have a cheap product coming into America, tariff. That's what I'm going to do. Now, is that going to work? I am heavily skeptical that that's going to work. I am heavily skeptical, but who knows? That's what he's going to try. On top of that, he has stated that he is going to go after countries that try to de-dollarize, which, again, is rather mind-blowing. That's like a company trying to force you to drink their product or use their product. That, I would promise you, will create a situation where countries will de-dollarize faster. That is not going to slow that process down. We'll see. Donald Trump is coming in like a bull in a candle shop. And up to this point, he has been shaking Washington with the picks that he's been adding to his administration. Many of these people I would consider to be sociopaths. But two, Gabbard and RFK, for whatever their ills, I actually like those two picks. Let's take a break. You guys are listening to Jamal Thomas Morning Show. Back in a moment. Let's see. How do I do this? Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. All right, guys, can you hear me all right? Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me? I think Skype is taking the sound. I think Skype is taking. Yeah, can you guys? Oh, good. They say yes. Okay, excellent. Excellent. We are trying a bit of tech stuff. So I'm not, I wasn't sure if this was going to work the way it was supposed to. All right. I am here with the one and only Mark Frost. Mark Frost is an economist, professor, consultant, drummer, Eagle Scout, Marine, capitalist, Schumpeterian, and recovering libertarian, and easily one of my favorite people to talk to. Mark, welcome to the show, man. How you doing this morning? Oh, thanks, man. Well, yeah, I mean, Fault Lines has been 5 years. Oh, wait. They can't hear you. They can't hear you. God dog it. All right, they can't hear you. All right, all right. So the tech is not doing what I wanted the tech to do. Damn it. Ugh. Yeah, I can try to send you a link. All right, I'll close this and I'll try to send you a link. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, guys. I am going to try to send Mark a link and I'm going to see if that works. Give me a moment. I apologize for this. His system wasn't working with my system all that well. Let's see. And if we can't, we'll have to work something out. Because I really want to get Mark. I've been trying to find somebody to have this conversation on expectations. That is an economist. I am obviously not an economist. So it doesn't really do anything for me to have that conversation. Let's see, link. All right. We're going to see if we can get Mark and if we can get him to join us. If we can't, no worries. We keep this boat moving. But I really want to have the economic conversation. While we wait on Mark, how are you guys doing this morning? What is it, too loud? We don't see him either? Yeah, you guys don't see him. That's okay. That's okay. We'll wait on him to come. By the way, I was telling people early this morning that I got a phone call. So I've been trying to figure out how to get the calls working on the show because I really want people to be able to call in to the show. That was something that people have asked about for a bit. So as I went through my old Google line, I found that people have been trying to call me, and there is one particular phone call that is rather amazing. Now, I am not supposed to show this phone call, and I have been threatened. Oh, I've been threatened about sending that phone call or playing the phone call because they believed it was supposed to be where is it? There it is. Yeah. So I go check my phone lines and I have a message. I have several messages. There are 30 of the messages actually. I condensed a few down to the most basic point. The person is somewhat scattered, but nevertheless, what they wanted got across. Now, they are deeply delusional in these text messages. And some of the things that they say is greatly disturbing. I am not supposed to show this, and I've been threatened, but I'm going to show this anyway because I care about my audience just that much. I got a call from Donald Trump. I got a call from Donald Trump. And he
President Donald Trump
apparently was asking me for help about something that I really don't have the ability to help with. But I'm going to let you hit the call anyway. This is Trump. He hit me up.
Trump, the man that took Kamala Harris to the woodshed in last week's presidential election. She's not very smart. Not very smart. Not very smart at all. I'm calling for Garland Thomas from Fault Lines on Radio Sputnik. He's a black African American. Call me back. Hello, this is future President Donald Trump, the man that won 3 presidential elections in a row. No man has ever won so much. Garland, the fate of the nation is at stake, the fate of the world. Call me back. Call me back. Call me back immediately. Also, I have started watching your morning show. Good work. Radio Sputnik. He's a black African American. Call me back. Hello, this is future President Donald Trump, the man that won 3 presidential elections in a row. No man has ever won so much. Garland, the fate of the nation is at stake, the fate of the world. Call me back. Call me back. Call me back immediately. Also, I have started watching your morning show. Good work. Garland, why are you calling yourself Jamal Thomas? You are confusing me. You are confusing me greatly. By the way, I'm eating fried chicken legs and Fruit Loops while enjoying your show. I still need you to call me. It is important. It is very, very important. I need. Jumping Jesus Christ. I am sorry. I thought that was going to be silent but deadly. It surprised me, Garland. Surprised me greatly. I could not stop it. It was too powerful to hold back. Hate on what the hell was in that bucket of gravy. Oh, God, I think I crapped myself. Call me back.
Oh, this is horrible, Trump. Let's keep going.
There is a national security emergency that only you can solve. Do you understand me? National security, it's imperative, it's big.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Wait a minute, 1 second. Let me get rid of this. There we
I'm
are.
trying to use an earpiece, but it's not working, and I don't know how to use Opera, but I'm learning something new.
Well, you sound great. I can hear you perfectly fine. We were on standby. We were listening to a conversation that Donald Trump called me and left a message on my answering machine. So I'm glad that you were here. How you doing this morning, Mark? You doing all right?
I'm doing really well. As I was, kind of got started when we first, when the sound wasn't working. I'm just pleased to be here. I think you're a wonderful guy. I forgot how long we've been doing this with each other back in the Fault Lines days.
5 years.
Been a few years, yeah.
5 years.
I think at first people thought we were going to fight or something.
Well,
because we do have some differences, but we have more similarities than differences, and the differences are interesting. So,
well, I think you're rational. I just think you're rational.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why I say that, right? Like for example, Malik and I will argue over political stuff, but ultimately I think he's an honest actor.
Yeah.
It is far easier to deal with people who are honest actors, even when they disagree with you, as opposed to ideologues, who are hitting.
Absolutely. And that's what people used to ask me all the time. Why do you go on Sputnik Radio when it's a Russian controlled whatever, you know what I mean? And the answer was always because I've been on MSNBC, I've been on CNN, I've been on Fox, I've been on countless radio shows. It's the only program I've ever been on where a producer didn't want to know what I was going to say before I said it and didn't try to steer me. On that Sputnik show, I have said critical things of Putin.
Yeah.
There was nobody in my ear saying, "Oh, you can't say that, can't do that."
It never
and so
functioned.
I liked doing the show for that because it was real.
It
and
never
I don't like
functions.
fake things.
It honestly was never the way they used to talk about it. Like they would be like, Putin is controlling these people. It's like nonsense. These people, all of these people are Americans, and all of these people have just points of view. Yes. And it wasn't like there was no heavy hand. It was more, honestly, the heavy hand was more so on getting the story right. If we screwed something up, that's when it would be like, that's not the way it happened. You clearly know, et cetera, et cetera. It would be like facts that we get wrong. It wasn't no heavy-handed ideological stuff like that. No, people had their points of view. You have people who were far to the right, people who were far to the left, and everything in between. And we were open for all of it. So, yeah, it sucks.
Absolutely.
It's just wild.
I'm just reminded by something. One of my favorite quotes of Aristotle is, "It's the mark of a educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without necessarily accepting it."
Yes.
And that's the sort of people I respect. That's my friends. That's my friend group.
Yeah.
We can go at each other and then go have a beer later.
Yeah, I mean, because I got to be honest, I can't. I mean, there have been stuff that we've argued and debated about, but I can't think of leaving with a bad taste in my mouth. It was just because I think, from my point of view, if I understand where the person is coming from, it doesn't. I don't have to agree. I can still see where they're coming from. I can put myself in their spot. Mark, I wanted to have the conversation with you because I was super curious about your take, A, on the election. So I definitely want to get that out first. But B, what Trump is saying he is going to do to, quote, make America great again. And what that boils down to is effectively, I'm going to pass sanctions and I'm going to use tariffs and I'm going to try to keep businesses here in one sense. And I'm going to punish companies or punish, let's say, countries that decide to de-dollarize. Meaning, it's wild. It's a weird situation. The Democratic Party doesn't really acknowledge BRICS. Like, they have not said anything about it. They haven't said anything about $35 trillion in debt. They haven't said anything about the world organizing against the way we operate. Trump, in his more lucid moments, has pointed out, they seem to be organizing against America. We seem to be losing the dollar, and these sanctions are problematic. Like, he seems to be aware of that, even to the point of him saying he's going to get rid of sanctions. Now, of course, that was collective shit fit all over the place when he basically said that. But his reasoning was pretty straightforward. We are antagonizing countries with our dollar, and we need to stop it. Otherwise, they are going to stop using that dollar. Now, the catch becomes, does he have any capability of doing that, though? Or is that horse already out the barn? So I want to do the first one first. Give me your take on the election. What did you think about Trump's win, and why do you think he won?
Sure. If you talk to different people, you get different answers, but I'm a numbers guy. So I've spent, since the election, I've been drilling down. I want to see what the percentages are, that sort of a thing, because different people have different things. Some people are very knowledgeable on the issues. Some people are one issue voters. Some people are first time voters. What shocked me the most was he got Gen Z. I didn't see that one coming. I'll just be honest. And he didn't just get a few of them. He won big on first time voters, just went with Trump. And I'll tell you what I think. And I haven't heard this before. And you could certainly argue all sorts of arguments, and they're not wrong. Mm-hmm. Here's what I think. Everybody has a job, most people. I'm self-employed, but most people have a job. When before I retired as a professor, and I still teach adjunct now and then, there are HR departments that have become sort of like the Gestapo. You can't say this, you can't say that.
Yeah.
And you and I are old enough to remember back when the Democratic Party was the fun party.
Yes.
You could go.
Chomsky. What did Noam Chomsky say? He said free speech. It's exactly for the speech that you don't like. I mean, that was Chomsky. That was the lefty, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I remember being a musician, I remember back when the Republicans were wanting to ban records and wanting to put people in jail for saying the F word or something on a and even some Democrats were doing that, but it was the Republicans that were leading it. They were the buzzkill party, was the Republicans. And it has switched over the last, whatever it's been, 8 years, 12 years. I mean, what I find fascinating, Democrats turn on themselves on a dime. I mean, you say the wrong word, you have to walk on eggshells. And I think after a while, people got tired of that. And, people like to feel good. And what I've noticed, at least where I live, there's a spring in everybody's step. Even a lot of Democrats I know secretly, they're not going to come on this show and say it. Even they're like, you know what? Everybody just seems happy, and I'm kind of happy too.
Yeah.
And my Democrat friends that voted for Harris, every single one of them are appalled as information keeps coming out about how that campaign was so poorly done. I know. Think the numbers that are coming out have blown my brain. $1 billion. $1
billion. 3 months.
And they're in debt.
Yeah, $20 million in debt.
And you might know this more than I. I'm an economist, not a political scientist. I am unaware of millions of dollars being paid for endorsements ever in any previous campaign. Are
That
you?
one is weird because she gave Oprah Winfrey $1 million. I mean, which is just mind blowing, right? Oprah Winfrey didn't disclose that when she's out there giving Kamala Harris an endorsement. Al Sharpton gave him a ton of money. Again, she came on the show, did an interview with him, and it came across as if, oh yeah, we're just having an interview because I endorse this person, not that I have a financial relationship with this person. It is
And
bizarre.
I don't know why those celebrities would do that. They're not broke, and it destroys their brand. I mean, imagine if I came on this show and I advocated for XYZ, and then later everybody found out that I had a financial interest in XYZ.
Yeah, I'm paying
And
you.
I lose all credibility forever, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, what
you
it
know, it's
shows
bad.
is these, for instance, Eminem. I'm an
Yeah.
Eminem fan. He looked like a hostage when he read that. I am here to endorse Kamala Harris for president. And every Eminem fan noticed it. They're like, what the heck? You know?
Yeah.
And so the big picture is the Democrats became buzzkill.
Yeah, they did. They
Second,
did.
I don't care if you hate Trump. You cannot take away he worked his tail end off on this campaign.
Yes,
he went
did.
on every podcast. He went on podcasts I've never heard of.
Yeah.
He went on Gen Z podcasts. He went everywhere that would have him. And now we know Kamala had a chance to reach the Joe Rogan audience. What
Yes.
politician in their right mind doesn't want the biggest platform on the planet?
See, right there, that is exactly your point, right? Like Democrats, they've lost the ability to talk to regular people.
Yes.
It was the CNN thing where the guy was trying to point out why they were running trans ads. And as he was saying, he says, yeah, we don't really want little boys to play with little girls. And the guy flips out. He's like, they're not boys. And he's like, okay, so what do you want me to call them then? And the guy's like losing his mind. And it's kind of like, dude, that's the point, right? That's the issue. You're doing that. Like nobody is saying anything hateful. Nobody's saying anything racist or bigoted. And you are losing your mind over this guy's description of him just explaining the situation to you from his framing of it. And, you know, going on Joe Rogan has one of the largest podcasts in the history of podcasts. And yet Democrats see him as the devil, which is wild to me because she's running around with Liz Cheney. Like, it's almost as if like regular people are an anathema to the Democratic Party, but Liz Cheney, a warmonger, perfectly fine. It is bizarre. It is utterly bizarre to me.
And then also, you know, as you know, I play in a jazz band, you know, and we play 1 to 2 times a month, that sort of a thing. And I'm the only white dude in the band. And, you know, there's these, I don't even know what to call them. Let's call them intellectual wannabe. Let's call them intellectual dilettante white women.
Okay.
Have the balls to go up to a black person and tell them that they're not being black right. I don't know what that would feel like. I'm not black. I don't know what that would feel like, but
that would not be
either really
tolerated.
funny or it's just offensive as can possibly be. And they don't get it. They don't realize that they had a demographic in hand and they just said, you know what? We don't respect you at all. Just vote like you're told. Then they bring out Obama. Everything
that backfired.
I mean, they assume that Obama can say 2 + 2 = 5, and black folks are going to say, yes, massa, you know, yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's exactly what, if you say it, it's true. I mean, I try to put myself from an empathic perspective. What would I do if somebody, you know, I was in county jail maybe 40 years ago, you know, I'll confess something. The only time it's ever happened was I was talking to some folks, you know, when you're in that situation, you know, you have
everybody's equal.
Kind of like you kind of form little tribes, and the tribes I kind of formed. Nobody told me the white folks can't go hang out with black folks, and so this dude comes up and he goes, "Why are you hanging out with the darkies?" You know, and I just look at him and I go, "I think I'm going to hang out with whoever I want." You know, that was that, but that's the only time that's ever happened. But I just can't imagine someone coming up to me and saying, "You're not being quite right." I mean, that has to be the most offensive thing.
I mean, that's the Joe Biden thing, right? If you don't vote for me, you ain't black. I mean, but they have look, the Democratic Party is very bizarre on this. They have gotten to the point of believing that they own votes, like whether it's the Hispanic vote, whether it's the Black vote. Like you see them on
Yes.
MSNBC losing their minds and being spiteful about it. Like they're like, you Hispanics that voted for Trump, when your family members are being taken, you own it. Or
Yes.
they're going after the Arabs. When Trump goes after you, you own it. I mean, they are being bitter and angry that these groups, they are inverting the political process. It is the job
Yes.
of the candidate to go get the vote. And somewhere along the way, they stop believing that. And to make it worse, it's not like Kamala Harris ran to her base. Like if you were running around with Republicans and you're a Democrat, how is that enticing to your base to any degree? It's not. Like she ran a horrible campaign and spent $1 billion to do it. It's just wild to me.
And she got nothing for it. I mean,
No.
nothing. Trump just did podcasts are free.
Yeah.
But to my knowledge, there's no report that Trump paid anybody.
Trump only brought in $400 million. That's it.
Yes.
He brought in almost a third less than what Kamala Harris did. And to rub salt in the wound, got on Twitter the next day and said, hey, I just learned that Kamala Harris is in debt. And we didn't spend much money because we had free advertisement. So we, in interest of a unified country, need to help Kamala Harris with her debt. Like that is just brutal.
That was a master troll right there. I mean, that gets the Troll of the Year award to me.
Yeah. $1 billion and $20 million in debt in 3 months. That is mind blowing. It is hard for me to get across that much money being spent, burned on the White House lawn.
And if she's that bad, I don't want her running the country. I'll just be blunt. I mean, if you can't manage your own, if you can't manage $1 billion, how are you going to manage $37 trillion?
Look, I didn't vote for Trump.
And this is what I am utterly convinced about. And again, disclaimer: I'm not a political scientist. I analyze primarily economic things, not political things. And when I analyze political things, it's usually, what are the economics around that? But, that being said, I think the Democrats made a giant mistake by letting their party apparatchiks choose the nominee instead of having a primary.
That too.
I think if they would have had a convention, a primary, these errors, these fatal flaws of Harris would have been disclosed. Yeah. I remember when Tulsi just destroyed her. That's when I became a Tulsi fan.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Tulsi's my favorite politician on the stage today. That's who I would have voted Democrat. Just imagine here. I had texted you, I think it was last night or something. I go, I was driving the other day and I thought, what if Biden would have chose Tulsi?
Oh, he would have never.
I would have voted her. I would have voted for Biden.
Oh, they hate her guts, Martin.
Oh, they hate her. I think worse than they hate Trump.
Yeah, they can't not stand her. And look,
and again, if you're a person of any kind of melanin in your skin, apparently you're not allowed Democrat orientation or something. I don't get the attitude. I think they think that it works and it doesn't. It backfires.
This goes back to your original point that Democrats used to be different. They used to be anti-war. At the very least, they used to be a big contention of it. These days, they hate her because she points out Obama got us involved in a regime change war that got 500,000 people killed. And they flipped out. She went on CNN talking about this. She went everywhere that she could talking about this. And they hate her for it. Even the Ukraine stuff, when she brings up, it's like, this is regime change war again. And we're agitating Russia on this. They hate her guts. And of course, the thing that you mentioned, this.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president. But I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed.
This ended Kamala Harris' first campaign. That literally ended her campaign. I mean, like, it was brutal.
Destroyed her.
They only gave her like 30 seconds, and that's all it took.
She never recovered. And I think these nominations, part of economics, anyone that has followed me, through the show, that kind of thing, knows that my one word that drives economics markets or that drives markets is expectations.
Right. Right.
If you don't smash expectations, the Fed has no power. Their power is to break expectations of the future markets, all that kind of stuff. And what the Trump win and the big win and the nominees he's doing out is shattering expectations. Again,
Yes.
I just find everybody to have a better spring in their step. I bet you $100 against the nickel, Putin has a better spring in his step. He's like, maybe I don't have, as a last resort, participate in World War III. Maybe this isn't required. Maybe Trump will come. Maybe Trump has some common sense and realizes, okay, we don't. Let's put this thing aside. And it just seems true to me. I mean, markets are up. I'm a consultant, so I deal with small businesses all around the Atlanta Metroplex. And even the people that are Democrats feel better about business activity tomorrow. And that cannot be overestimated, the impact of that. Now, this country has some severe problems that Trump's not the Messiah. He's not going to be able to come and fix a $37 trillion debt.
Right.
And the $37 trillion debt is manageable if and only if the dollar remains the reserve currency.
Yeah. Mark, God, man, I have to get you back. Now that this is working.
Sure.
But
now that we got the technology figured out.
Right, now that part's fixed. Because my audience was pissed off because I was playing their Trump call. But from your point of view, what happens if we lose that status? I mean, because right now we're at 50%, 56%, give or take. We were at 70-something% like 20 years ago. And the BRICS countries are actually organizing with this notion of, look, we're not attacking the dollar. However, we are trying to go in our own currencies because we don't really trust you. What happens if we lose the reserve currency? Because Putin has already pointed out that is a weapon. That basically that is a strategic resource to be able to use the dollar in the way that it's used. He pointed out that we spent $10 trillion out of thin air over the course of the last, let's say, 5 years. And he was like, what the hell? How are you just making money out of thin air like that? And think about what you can use that money for if you could just create money out of thin air. What happens? And this will be the last question. What happens if we lose the reserve currency and we're $38 trillion in debt?
It would be worse than a nuclear attack.
Really?
Yes. It's from an economic perspective, it's an absolute nuke because what Americans don't realize is inflation stung, and it really stung the working poor, right? What Americans don't realize is that inflation hit Europe much worse because they printed more money as a percentage than we did.
Really?
And yes, and the EU turned on the printing presses. But the other big player is about 70% of all US dollars are held outside the United States. Most of the transactions in dollars are not in the United States. It's outside the United States. So it's just simple supply and demand. It's just your economics 101 class. What would happen? It doesn't matter the reason. What would happen if 50% of the demand of the external demand for the US dollar just stopped overnight? Well,
the value would drop. The dollar would drop.
The Federal Reserve would be forced, because we have to pay our bills. Right. The Federal Reserve would be forced to print some more money to buy treasury bills from the US Treasury. So you have a quasi-government agency printing fictitious units of value and exchanging it with the Treasury Department for fictitious pieces, for instruments of fictitious value backed only by faith. And it's faith that keeps the world's monetary system afloat. Now, most countries don't want that to happen, because if the United States melted down economically, there's that expression, when the United States catches a cold, the world, gets the flu. You know, when we sneeze, the world gets cold. You know, those sorts of things that they say, and that's very true. So, but if it happened, if we ever defaulted by our own International Monetary Fund that we had, we didn't just have a hand in establishing it, we did establish it, we would have to go into receivership. The IMF would come in and do just like they did Greece and say, okay, you guys have Social Security. You're going to have to cut Social Security benefits. You're going to have to cut pensions. You're going to have to cut military retirements. You're going to have to do this, or we're not going to help.
Mark, I'm going to have to
and
close
so
it.
the only thing I could think of to get out of, and this is when countries go to war. I mean, think about it. Countries go to war when their back is against the wall. This is what I didn't like about Ukraine. It doesn't matter whether you like Putin or not. Ukraine to us is a minor thing. I mean, the only reason we're there anyway is it's clear to me the neocons looked at it and said, you know what, let's just destroy Ukraine, and that will deplete Russia's, that will deplete their resources, and we don't have to really hardly do anything except spend some money.
Mark, I'm going to have to close it on that.
Sure.
And I've had to get you back, man, because this is
Anytime,
a fascinating conversation. Thank you for this, man. I'm glad the technology is finally working. And I want to get you back next week. I swear to God.
Thank you. Anytime.
Thank you. Mark Frost, economist, professor, consultant, drummer, Eagle Scout, Marine, capitalist, Schumpeterian, recovering libertarian. You can follow Mark on Twitter at FrostyCat. Now,
this is Frederick von Hayek.
Oh, that's the cat.
Yeah.
No, cat. We never get a chance to see him.
All righty. All right, man.
You have a good
Bye-bye.
one, man. All right. Oh, that is fascinating conversation. And we are on to another fascinating conversation with the man himself, the man of the hour, Dr. Wilmer Leon. We are joined with Dr. Wilmer Leon. He's a political scientist, nationally syndicated columnist, and host, or former host of the Critical Hour. Bastards. Dr. Leon, what is your current show, by the way? Because I know you're still on the show.
Well, there are, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So there are two shows. My Sirius XM show called Inside the Issues, Saturdays on Sirius XM 126 from 11 to 2 Eastern. And now daily, I have a podcast, Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, which you can find on YouTube and Patreon and everywhere podcasts are provided.
Excellent. Man, let's connect some dots.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. So, and apologize for being late. There were technical issues with Mark when I was trying to get him on. I apologize. I'm sorry.
I will find it in my heart to forgive you.
Thank you. Thank you. So Trump is our once and future president. He's our once and future president.
Mm-hmm.
From your point of view, from your learned point of view, you've studied politics for God knows how long. Why did he win? What did the Democrats do wrong? And what did Trump do right?
Well, you know, I'm glad that you framed the question that way. Normally, I don't toot my own horn, but folks that have read this piece say that it is well done. And in that, I say you need to stop asking why did Kamala lose and start asking why did Donald Trump win. And I think there are a number of reasons. First of all, the economy. A lot of people really don't understand the cyclical nature of economies. And so there were a lot of people that were saying, I was better off during the first Trump campaign. I was financially better off. And they were attributing those benefits to Donald Trump, not understanding that it takes about 1.5 to 2 years from the previous administration's economic circumstance to make its way into, well, no, I had that backwards. The first 2 years of the Trump economy were more attributable to the Obama economic cycle than Trump's economic knowledge. We also had a a pandemic, which made that whole cycle and circumstance incredibly unique. So to ascribe the benefit to Donald Trump, I believe, was misapplied, and Vice President Harris did a terrible job of explaining that to the American people. Another thing that I think factored into this, independents tend to be not so ideologically driven as they are economically driven. And so because a good number of those undecideds or those independents, they were looking at the economy, the chances of them based on an ideological basis voting for Kamala Harris was incredibly minimized. And she did nothing to appeal to those people. Another element, Donald Trump stuck to his base. Kamala Harris ran from her base. Instead of her embracing Dick Cheney, she should have been embracing Bernie Sanders. Instead of her running around with Liz Cheney, she got the wrong Liz. She should have been running around with Elizabeth Warren.
Yep.
She thought somehow that standing with or literally next to war criminals, as in Dick Cheney and his daughter, that somehow was going to ingratiate her with, I don't know who. I guess she thought she was going to pull in a whole bunch of disaffected Republicans.
She did. That's exactly what she did. In fact, I want to play this for you.
But not enough.
Well, right. I mean, her thought was, and because this is Democratic playbook, I would argue right here, Chuck Schumer. I know you remember this because, and I want you to tell me whether or not you believe this was the campaign that Kamala Harris effectively ran. Because from my point of view, she effectively ran exactly what Chuck Schumer is saying right here. And the reason she did it is because all things being equal, she gets sick of lefties. Like you said, they ran from the base. In their mind, we're going to get so many disaffected Republicans that we're going to replace this lefty progressive branch that just wants healthcare and education. They want all of these things that we don't want to provide anyway. This is Chuck Schumer.
And it's already won a large percentage of those people over. On the other hand, Trump is so new that for every, this is the second point, for every blue-collar Democrat we will lose in Western PA, we will pick up 2, 3 moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And you can repeat that in Ohio and Illinois and Wisconsin. The voters who are most out there.
Does he drink?
I don't.
Does he drink?
We might have started. We might have started after this election.
He must have been flat, stone cold drunk.
That's what they thought.
Yeah. Liz Cheney voted for Donald Trump 98% of the time.
Yep.
Kamala, wrong move, homegirl. I know she watches the show, Jamal. Wrong move, homegirl. Wrong damn move. She ran from her base. Yep. When Donald Trump's advisors, and this is a mistake that I made in my calculus around September, I was saying Donald Trump is still running a primary campaign. He has not shifted to the general election.
Right.
Well, I was wrong. I was right in that assessment, but I was wrong on the impact.
Right.
He say what you want about the man, and most of what you say will be true and correct. He's the devil reincarnate. We got all that. But but like the devil, he's a phenomenal marketer. And he understands, oh, the wind's blowing this way. Who was it that said, there go the people, I must now lead them? He stuck to his base. Yep. And all of this chatter about disaffected black men and black men abandoning Kamala, they came into this as though because she's an African, because she's a black woman that went to an HBCU that can do the electric slide, that she is entitled.
Yeah.
Entitled. That's how they played this.
Yeah.
And that if you, Jamarl Thomas, as a African-American man, even question her, you hate black women.
Yep.
You hate yourself.
Misogynist.
You're a misogynist.
Yeah.
No, I'm just a voter that wants to know if you're asking me for my vote, as opposed to telling me I'm supposed to vote for you. Why?
Yeah.
What are you giving me? And when you listen to her, you look, it was the middle of September before she had a policy tab on her website.
I know.
And folks wanted to say, oh, well, that's because she didn't have time. She had a damn $1 billion.
Yeah.
Kamala, if you'd have sent me 300 grand, you'd have had in a week.
Right.
In a week. Look,
Right.
If send, and I'm throwing these names out there. I'm not ascribing any.
Right.
Send Dr. Richard Wolf 300 grand and see if, as an
In a heartbeat.
economist, he doesn't in a week give you economic policy. Send me 300 grand in a week. You got foreign policy. You know, I could have given her. And oh, by the by, didn't she run to be president 4 years before?
Yes.
So it's not as though she woke up on the 15th of July and said, you know what, I think I'm going to run for president.
But there's a difference. There's a difference. She ran in the primary last time.
But she ran.
No. What I mean is she evolved on her positions. Because as you pointed out, that you thought Donald Trump was going to tack back to the left in order to go into the main thing. Basically, that's what they do, right? They run a particular thing. They lie.
She ran to the right.
She ran to the right. I mean, she transnational gangs. She was out there with Liz Cheney, genocide, pro-war. I mean, in fact, the pro-war thing was fascinating because she was taking the position as if she was orthodoxy on pro-war and that the public agreed with her. So she was like, oh, he's hanging out with dictators. And she's throwing it out there like as if she's arguing abortion. Like if you notice, when she's arguing abortion, she has a certain cadence to her because she knows the rest
she
of the
knows
public
that issue.
Exactly. And the public
she knows that issue. As a woman, she viscerally knows that issue.
But see, she talks about war in the same way, as if the public is on my side on this issue. And it's like, no, they're not. It's like, no, they're not. The orthodoxy is not on your side. But the public is okay with him making a deal with Kim Jong-un to stop firing missiles in the Sea of Japan. They're okay with him ending the war in Ukraine. They're okay with that stuff. And it was almost like she was mind blown that wasn't, that her orthodoxy wasn't the thing that the public wanted on that issue.
But my point about her running before had more to do with infrastructure and you ran for the job 4 years ago,
right?
Which means you had to have put something together, even though it was horrible because you couldn't even make it out the first debate. But you had something there, and you were VP for 4 years.
There's that.
So it's not as though you were trying to run for German parliament as an American who just went on to Germany for vacation and decided you were going to run. I would think I'm going to run to be in the Bundestag.
Right.
No. And also what we saw was a horrific failure by the party. That's why my piece isn't, well, depending on where you read it, the original title is Requiem for a Failed Campaign and a Party, because the Democratic Party is done.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton has moved them so far to the right that if Ronald Reagan were to reappear today, he would be considered a conservative Democrat, not a Republican. And the country isn't there.
Yeah.
He lost all 5 swing states. Now, if people want to say, well, it was misogynistic Latinos. No. Those folks are working.
No, yeah.
Those folks have jobs. Those folks are voting their interest, or what they perceive to be their interest, because Donald Trump is lying to them. I mean, for the most part, Donald Trump is lying.
Yeah, I don't think
he's playing them. He's
look,
playing
I
them,
don't think
and
Donald Trump.
they got played.
Yeah, I don't think he's an honest actor on this stuff. I mean, truth be told, Kamala Harris lost 10 million votes. Like, if you're looking at Joe Biden brought in 81 million votes. Kamala Harris brought in 71 million. If that number pops up 2 million when they finish California, which is humiliating that they're still counting California, by the way, but whatever. He still beat her by like 8 million votes. Or Joe Biden, meaning if Kamala Harris had Joe Biden numbers, she would have won this race. Like, those people just stayed home. They were uninspired. There was nothing to inspire them, nothing to get them out in order to go to the polls.
I don't want to hear she was a black woman. No. And here's why that's BS. See, that's why it's BS. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in 2016.
Yes, she did.
She got 64 million votes.
Yes, she did.
And at last I checked, she's a woman. Barack Obama won twice, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a black man. So I know that we're not talking apples to apples, but we are talking apples within a fruit basket. Kamala Harris, last I checked, you said 74 million.
It might be up to 74.
71,
71, but it's a bit up from California. Yeah.
So Kamala Harris got like 9 million more votes than Hillary Clinton got, or whatever the number is. I don't know. So don't tell me America won't vote for a woman, because America did and voted. She got more votes than Hillary Clinton got, and Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in 2016. Don't tell me they won't vote for a person of color, because Barack Obama won twice. How about this?
Yeah.
You ran a lousy campaign. You had no policy. And people say to me, oh, well, she articulated. No, they were talking points.
Yeah.
And here's an example. $25 million for a first-time home buyer. Every economist I talk to, Dr. Jack Rasmus, Dr. Richard Wolff, Dr. Linwood Tawhid, they all said the same thing. All that's going to do, first of all, is raise the price of the house by $25,000. Now that the seller knows there's $25,000 out there
right.
And here's a question, and this is why I say it wasn't a policy conversation. How are you going to pay for it? Where's the money? Where's the money for that one position when you're sending $8 billion to Ukraine, $8.7 billion to Israel, $600 million to Taiwan in a day?
Yeah.
Joe Biden sent that to them one day in October. In a day, you sent $17 billion of our hard-earned tax money overseas. How are you gonna pay for it?
If you remember, she said we can do both. There was one of the people stopped her and was asking her about, basically saying, I think we're sending too much money overseas, and I think we have many problems that we need to deal with here in the United States. And Kamala Harris is like, we can do both. And when Joe Biden is getting hit with that, Joe Biden says, well, we're America, we can do pretty much anything we want. And it's like, but with $35 trillion in debt, it's amazing to me that never comes up as a conversation. And again, when we were talking to Mark Frost was pointing out, it's like you have all of these countries that started to organize around the United States because of the way we use our dollar as a weapon and the way we use these kind of financial instruments to go after other countries, not to mention stealing money at this point. I mean, just astonishing.
The Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund?
Yeah, $300 billion.
The Venezuelan Sovereign Wealth Fund? We're stealing people's money.
Astonishing. And so it's like, at the point where countries stop using the dollar, okay, then what happens to the dollar? And his point was, well, we're $35 trillion in debt. The moment that if the dollar no longer is reserve currency, we are screwed. Right. That was his point.
Right.
And so, but from her point of view, and from many of the people point of view, the liberals, we can do it all. We can do it all. We're America. It doesn't affect one iota. And I want to
And
get your take on something else,
okay,
by the way, because somebody disagrees with you greatly
okay.
in
A
your
lot of people
analysis.
do. A lot of people
Uh,
do.
So I want you to, I want to give her a take, and I
It
want you
ain't
to
you.
give.
It ain't you, is it?
No, it's not me.
Oh,
I agree with everything that comes out of your mouth. Let's hear this. This is the
It's
MSNBC crowd.
important to say that,
oh,
anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed,
Queen Latifah never
oh,
endorsed Queen Latifah, Dr. Leon. So I understand what you were saying, but damn it, Queen Latifah, she endorsed her. So it had to be flawless. Had to
oh,
be. Because Queen
and
Latifah don't endorse no regular campaign.
and neither does Harrison Ford. And Harrison Ford endorsed her. I think it was Harrison Ford endorsed her as well. That is such baseless
Yeah.
garbage.
She said
Since
flawless.
this is a classy show, garbage.
Flawless campaign. Not one flaw, not one mistake. Flawless.
When you ask Vice President Harris a question, is it raining outside? Well, I was born in Oakland to a single mother, and we had very manicured lawns because it rained in Oakland when I was a child. Stop it, please. In fact, in my piece, I have a line. The bad lies you tell are the lies you tell yourself. And worse than that are the lies you tell yourself and start to believe.
Yeah.
That's why the Democrats can't move forward, because of crap like that.
Yeah.
I was raised to understand, and this was beat into me literally and figuratively and literally beaten into me. I came home in about the 6th grade with C's on my report card.
Uh-huh.
And my parents went I think it's apoplectic.
Apoplectic. Yeah, apoplectic.
Or some might say ape shit.
Yeah.
And I said, well, wait a minute. C's are average.
They're passing.
Average is okay. You have to be 3 times as smart, work 4 times as hard to get half as far in America because you are Black in America.
Yeah.
That's what was literally beaten into me by my parents. So for Joy Reid to let that mindless dribble be her first point of defense means she's missing not the big picture, the whole damn picture. Because the fact that, again, I just gave that Hillary Clinton won, Barack Obama won. Now Hillary Clinton ran a lousy campaign the same way Kamala Harris. And oh, by the way, isn't Kamala Harris a Hillary Clinton acolyte?
Yes, she is. Do you think that they are lying when they say that, or do you think it's a blind spot? Because I think I've come to the assessment. Yeah, exactly. Because on some level, I mean, Kamala Harris tried to make that entire campaign about Donald Trump. And it was almost as if Democrats loved it because it was like she's prosecuting the case against Trump, missing the fact that that's a very narrow window of people who are going to agree with you. Meaning the people who say Donald Trump is Hitler and a fascist already agree. They already agree with you. And I remember Axios came out with that story that basically said, stop doing that. Nobody believes that. Basically, you're not moving the needle on anybody that you need to get elected with that line of questioning or that line of argument, because Donald Trump is a fully formed thought. Meaning he has been in the public eye for 10 years at this point. So you really believe you're going to reshape his image after 10 years and all of the crap and stupid stuff Donald Trump has said? You're not going to do it. You're not going to do it.
How are you going to make my life better? I'm paying $3.50 a pound for tomatoes.
Yep.
How are you going and to tell me, well, we're going to tell the wealthy to pay their share of taxes. Wow, that's brilliant. We're going to tell them to pay their. Wow. Oh, we're going to attack inflation. Richard Nixon tried that. Didn't work.
Well, you realize the reason she said that is because she couldn't say the true thing that my boss.
It's her economy.
My current boss, right. My current boss might have done stuff that had adversely affected the economy. So I'm going to focus on corporate greed as opposed to, policy. And not to mention those sanctions about that war also played a part of it. I got this clip where they're asking Jen Psaki.
Mm-hmm.
And Jen Psaki basically says, well, our values come with a cost. And what she was referring to was the sanctions that were being passed. She knew that inflation was going to go up, costs were going to go up as a direct result of the sanctions that they were passing on Russia, even here and in Europe. And her response was, our values are not without costs. Basically, you need to take the hit for Ukraine. The level to which they are trying to cynically distance themselves, because from my point of view, I agree with you. I think part of it is a blind spot. The other part is they're trying to cynically distance themselves from fault and blame and failure. And I would argue this is a party issue. That party has so little values on this notion of blue, no matter who, that any candidate that has a heartbeat, they're willing to accept over a Republican. And what they keep missing is your values on some level matter. Like it matters that you have a bar below what you're willing to accept. If not for you, for the very basic point that the rest of the public is not going to vote for somebody that sucks. It's like you need to have a quality candidate on some level, even if it's not just for your own benefit, but for the country's benefit, and to just be able to win. And somewhere along the way, they thought Donald Trump is so bad that the public will clearly see it if Kamala Harris can articulate how bad he is. And it's like, dude, Clinton did that. That was Clinton's strategy, right? Donald Trump is horrible. Donald Trump is, menace. Donald Trump is going to end democracy, et cetera, et cetera. It didn't work with her.
People didn't want to buy genocide.
Yeah, that too.
You were trying to rationalize, justify, and sell us genocide. And here's a news flash, Jamarl. I don't know if you've seen this. People have a problem with genocide.
They tend to, yeah. As they should.
So,
as they should.
You telling me that Donald Trump is an idiot? He says that to me every day. Every time Donald Trump opens his mouth,
yes,
when he's finished speaking, I say, that dude's an idiot.
Right.
I don't need you to tell me that. We can talk about the basis, huh?
It's 9 o'clock. I was gonna
well, I can give you a couple minutes if you need a little more time.
Okay.
Convicted of 34 felonies. Now we can debate the validity of that. We can debate that, but what you can't debate is the fact he was convicted of 34 felonies.
Right.
He beat, I make this point in my piece. He beat y'all twice. He beat you twice. He beat Hillary Clinton and he just whipped your butt.
Now we can vote into.
We can talk about, well, he won by 2% more. She lost by. I was on a show on WPFW, Verna Avery Brown show, and she was trying to parse I said, Verna, stop it. She lost. Stop it. You can't find solace by parsing these numbers.
They don't
you got your butt kicked.
Yeah, they don't.
You didn't win a swing state.
Not one.
Not uno.
It's even worse. Donald Trump made gains in 49 of 50 states. 49 of 50 states.
Here's one other element that I think is very important that I haven't heard many people talk about. Joe Biden never released Kamala Harris from the Biden-Harris administration. Joe Biden never, huh?
I mean, does he have to, though? I mean, I guess from my point of view, Kamala Harris has a job to do in running a race and trying to win that race. And you can't allow your entanglements with Joe Biden to prevent you from beating the guy who you were calling Hitler, a fascist, the end of democracy, et cetera, et cetera.
But when you saw, as soon as her name was announced, the Republicans started calling it the Harris administration.
Yes, they did.
And Joe Biden never came out and said, as remember when Al Gore was running, and they were trying to tie Al Gore to the Monica Lewinsky fiasco, Bill Clinton came out and said, look, stop it. That was me. He had nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
He is his own man. He's running his own campaign. I was president. He was not. He is running separate from me. And then as soon as he said that, Al Gore's message changed.
Yeah.
Bill, some might say it's a trivial point, and it may be a trivial point. But when you lose by narrow margins, trivial points matter.
Everything matters. Yeah.
And so Joe Biden never said, I'm president. It was my administration. You now need to listen to what she is telling you that she is going to do moving forward. The past was mine. The future is hers.
Right.
That would have given her a little more latitude and leeway, I believe, to operate as her own candidate. One of the problems was, as they said this, and y'all can go back and look at I ain't hating on anybody. Y'all can go back and look at the stories when her staff was abandoning her.
Right.
What did they say? Right. She doesn't read her briefing books.
Yeah.
She doesn't go into meetings prepared. Simone Sanders may have said this.
Yeah.
When Simone, and I say may because I can't remember if it was, and I'm not trying to attribute anything to somebody that isn't true, but if it wasn't Simone, there were a number of people that said she doesn't read her briefing books. She doesn't go into meetings prepared. And and because of that, when she gets exposed as not being prepared, she gets angry at the staff.
Right. Because she had 90% turnover or something? Some insane amount of turnover.
And when I listened to her talk about the economy, I heard a woman who didn't know what she was talking about. When I heard her try to talk about immigration, I heard a woman that didn't know what she was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, she did not run a good campaign, and they are not. And and the sad part is, it's not just her; it's the party as broadly.
Right.
Like it's not just
they got nothing.
Loss. Yeah, it's a brand issue. Before I let you go, what do you think they're going to do now? Like, where do they? I got to be honest. I have no answer for this question, and I've asked a few people, and then they haven't had an answer for it. Where does the party go now? I know I get the wilderness part, but I don't know how they cobble themselves back together after a loss like this, especially to a man they call Hitler, fascist, and as you pointed out, 33 criminal convictions in a court of law.
I don't know what they're going to do. When I was 13 years old, I was lost in the woods in the Sierra Nevadas.
Yeah. For
a day and a half. And at night, I found the North Star. And with the group I was with, we were able to navigate by finding the North Star. They can't find the North Star. They found the North Star and they're headed east. They're clueless because of the duopoly that we now find ourselves enmeshed in. we're dealing with two wings on the same bird. They have been bought and paid for by the same benefactors. In fact, I'm telling folks, Democrats that are sitting there crying in their beer, what do we do? We'll call AIPAC, because AIPAC bought this damn thing. Look at what's his name from New York? Look at Kamala. Doug Emhoff is an AIPAC. I think he's an AIPAC lobbyist.
I wouldn't be shocked if he is.
So those of you that are sitting here crying, "Woe is me! What am I to do now?" We'll call AIPAC, especially African Americans that are sitting around crying in their beer. What do we do? Where do we go? Call AIPAC. See if they help you. See what they do. See if they even answer the damn phone. So,
yeah.
Hey man, I don't
have an answer for it. I legit don't have an answer for it. I don't know.
I know Minister Farrakhan said, "Hey folks, y'all are asking me what to do now. I'm telling you, I done told you what to do, and you didn't want to listen. I'm done telling you. You didn't." He says, "Now you got to figure it out." He says, even a little squirrel has more. This is Minister Farrakhan. Even a little squirrel has more sense than black people. At least a squirrel knows to store nuts in a tree.
Wow.
That ain't me. That's the minister.
But
he's right.
Dr. Wilbur Leon. He is political scientist, nationally syndicated radio host. There we are, nationally syndicated radio host, and a good friend of this show. Thank you, my man. I appreciate this.
Anytime.
All right.
I'm out.
I am going to take a quick break. I enjoyed that. I deeply enjoyed that. I got to be honest, man. I have no idea where they go. I really don't. I mean, sometimes, like, for example, when Trump lost to Biden, Trump still had a political coalition around him when he lost. So it wasn't like you lose and that's the end of all things. It was that political coalition stayed. I mean, I'll give you another example. Sanders. When Bernie Sanders lost, his political coalition stayed. In fact, they stayed around for 4 years for him to run again and lose again. But the political coalition stayed intact even when they lost. There was no political coalition around Joe Biden. They didn't love Joe Biden. Joe Biden was just a stand-in for somebody to go after Trump. I would argue the same thing is true of Kamala Harris. They didn't love Kamala Harris. She was awkward. She was strange in the way that she kind of came across. She was inauthentic. Often she ran around with Republicans. She was pro-genocide. She was pro-war. In fact, not just pro-war, she derided Trump because he wanted to end wars. That was the campaign she ran. That was what she ran. She didn't run to the left. There was nobody who loved her, per se. It was people who wanted to keep Trump out of office. There's a radical difference in those things. And that radical difference in those things is shown by the amount of energy that goes for one versus the people who get up and drag themselves for the other. I'm saying because there is no political coalition around Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, that there is nothing there for them to kind of cobble the stuff back together and build something new as they move forward. There's just nothing there. I don't know what they end up with. A pro-war, pro-censorship, pro-genocide party that calls itself the left is utterly, entirely bizarre on its face. And yet, that's what it is. That's what it is. So I'm going to take a quick break. You guys are listening to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show, the best damn morning show in the morning. I didn't necessarily know where to go with that. I trapped myself with my language, but whatever. Best damn morning show in the morning. If you guys dig the content, give it a like, share it. You can always support this content through PayPal, Patreon, or for that matter, super chats or stickers, whatever you want to call them. All stickers will be read, providing they're not racist, sexist, or bigoted. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit the notification bell. I pop in at all times of the day and night. I tend to be an insomniac. And if you want this voice in your ear, just hit that bell and this voice will be at your beck and call. I will take a break You guys are listening to the Thomas Morning Show. Back in a moment. Mount Shasta, we're at the UFO convention. We're sky watching at this point, hoping to see something. Keep your eyes peeled. So we have just had the UFO hearings. Those have just taken place. There's supposed to be another hearing taking place, I believe, on November 19th. Some mind-blowing things came out of those hearings, including them putting into record a plan called Immaculate something, that basically the U.S. has been running right here. This is Lou Elizondo. That they've been reverse engineering alien spacecraft, and apparently that we have access to bodies. Now, the way this is often done is it's hidden from the public spotlight. And it's very bizarre because what the argument is, and I think the argument is probably right, that this stuff got buried to such a degree that Congress and our government, the government apparatus, does not have access to it. So last year, they were trying to pass legislation to allow Congress to use eminent domain laws to go into corporations and take the materials that they have at their disposal. Now, Elizondo has not been able to reveal this stuff in the open, but has been willing to talk to Congress members behind the scenes, which is why these Congress members are so adamant about this. In the Trump administration coming up, there are going to be a lot of UFO guys in positions of authority. Marco Rubio, UFO guy, signed on to the legislation, was one of the people who wrote that legislation and gave it teeth. John Ratcliffe was one of the people that was exposing the programs to the degree that he could. In fact, Ratcliffe went so far as to say he wanted to have that stuff out, but wasn't able to get it out the door before his term expired. So Trump has shown no propensity to release this information, but the people around him has. This is Nancy Mace talking to Lou Elizondo. Now, I've interviewed Elizondo. He ran the ATIP program. The ATIP program was basically the special access program that was investigating UFO technology. When I had him on the show, he was very clear that some of the questions I was asking him would have gotten him put in a cage. So he was not willing to answer some of those questions. But it's pretty clear he was obviously the person running that program. And so the idea that he's out here giving congressional testimony is fantastic. This follows up with David Grush, who also said something very similar about the fact that we have a reverse engineering program. And not just us, by the way, other governments around the globe. I mean, he went so far as to say he believes there's an arms race in regards to trying to study and profit off of that technology. I mean, profit in the sense of your country profiting. This is Elizondo. Yeah, I have time. All right, this is Elizondo talking to Nancy Mace. Wait, this is not Elizondo, and it's not the one I was looking for. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, don't tell me I got rid of Elizondo. Okay, perhaps I got rid of Elizondo. Damn it, I got rid of Elizondo.
When it comes to Blue Force Technologies, I would not be able to discuss.
Okay. Are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval programs?
We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I signed documentation 3 years ago that restricts my ability to discuss specifically crash retrievals.
I hope you guys heard that. He said, she asked him very point blank, are you involved in crash retrievals? Oh, our guest is here. I'm sorry. Okay, let's kill this. I'll go back to this after the fact. Let's see. There we are. There you are. Esteban, welcome to the show, man. How you doing this morning?
Hi, Jamal, and hello to everyone who's joining us. I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Excellent. Now, just for the audience, Esteban Carrillo, he's a Beirut-based Ecuadorian journalist and current editor for The Cradle. He was previously with Tele Sur English. Man, thank you for joining me. Where are you located, by the way, right now?
Right now, I'm actually not in Beirut. I am in Toronto. I've come here with my wife. So for the time being, we're here, which is, I'm grateful, honestly, because of the situation we're about to discuss in Lebanon that has really, truly escalated over the past several weeks.
Man, I am just glad that you were safe.
Thank you.
And there was Laith Maruth was here also, and he is in Beirut. And he would say there are drones above my head. There's stuff flying over.
Yeah, that's what I hear from my coworkers, that the droning, right? The drone from the drones, it's nonstop. It's nonstop over several, not just over Beirut, right? At this point, it's the entirety of Lebanon that is being targeted. It's no longer just Shiite villages or towns. It's the Sunni towns. It's the Christian towns. It's everywhere that Israel wants to hit. They can hit. They're destroying the Bekaa Valley. One of the most ancient sites in human history. The Temple of Jupiter that exists there. The south is essentially destroyed. The city of Tyre, another UNESCO World Heritage Site, is being destroyed. Nabatea, in the north as well, the massacres. They've been hitting nonstop. And it's a marked escalation since the U.S. election. This is a response to Trump getting elected, and this is a new Israeli war cabinet as well, a new Israeli government, essentially, that Netanyahu, after he fires
Israel Katz, right?
Minister, Israel Katz.
Yeah, I heard of Gallant. They fired Gallant, and I remember Gallant eventually left, but they brought on Israel Katz.
Yeah.
Is there any difference, though, between these two? I mean, both are Zionists. Is there any difference in the level of zealotry between Katz and Gallant?
I think that's the right word that you use there. The zealotry, the ultra religiousness, right? In their belief of what the state of Israel is and what it needs to accomplish. There is a slight difference, I would say, in that Yoav Gallant, he was two things. He was a pawn from the Pentagon of the U.S. The Ministry of Defense. This is why Netanyahu had been trying to get rid of him for so long.
Yeah.
And the other thing, he's a military man. He's a career general that butted heads with the prime minister many times because of what he saw as an aimlessness to the war in Gaza and to the war in Lebanon as well, right? Like no achievable goals, no end game, no day after plan, just war for the sake of war, just killing for the sake of killing. Again, Gallant, the man who said at the beginning of this genocide, we are fighting human animals and we must act accordingly. So, not exactly a moderate figure, but when compared to the more zealot elements of the Israeli government, he was, I guess, in a way, at the very least, this is yesterday, I believe, by Beirut airport.
Yeah. There's a plane that was literally on the runway as that happened.
Exactly. Meters from the runway. At this point, we are, possibly days, if not hours away from them just directly striking the airport. And we know at this point that Israel can do as they please, because all the Western media, all the Western governments are gonna play. What's the word? They're gonna be there to interfere, right? They're gonna play interference. They're gonna claim that this was all Hezbollah warehouses. At this point, what Israel is bombing, in particular in Beirut, but also across Lebanon, really, they're bombing the buildings where the displaced are taking shelter. We're talking about over 1.2 million people displaced. So Israel is just targeting them at this point, trying to ignite internal strife. right? And since Gallant gets fired, since Trump wins the presidency, names, an ultra-Zionist cabinet. Like, he speaks for officials. This is no longer make America great again. This is make Israel great again. This is Israel first officials, one after the other. We know that there's not going to be a de-escalation. We know there's not going to be a ceasefire, just like Gaza, right? In Gaza, the talk of ceasefire, of the two-state solution at this point, it's becoming a bit insulting. Let's be honest, to the lives of those who remain, and obviously to the lives that have been lost. In Lebanon, is the same approach, just mass destruction. Over the past couple of days, the new U.S. ambassador to Lebanon, Lisa Johnson, delivered a new, ceasefire proposal to officials, and they are describing it as blackmail. They are describing this proposal as being
what it is, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
being either you sign or we escalate.
It's like we're trying to bomb Beirut into the Stone Age, and if you don't sign this surrender deal, we're going to keep doing it. It's just that.
It is. There's no other way to describe it. You're right.
So there was a meeting recently. I believe it took place in Saudi Arabia, and it was an Arab Muslim meeting with all of the groups coming together. And Bashar al-Assad, this is fascinating on a few points. For one, Syria is brought back into the fold. Saudi Arabia and Iran have been working together. I mean, even to the point of military drills. So again, this is a new world that Donald Trump is somewhat coming into. This notion of the Abraham Accords, where he's going to get these countries to attack Iran, I can't see these countries being on board for that, especially with the association of BRICS in regards to Saudi Arabia and Iran. But Bashar al-Assad at that meeting effectively said, we have the power or the material means to change the context of this on the ground. I'm paraphrasing. And we just need the will to do it. Effectively saying this should stop, and we need to use a military force in order to make the stop. Now, I mean, there seems to be no energy or propensity for that at all. Is there a level of blood that the Arab community would accept that would compel them to respond to this level of atrocity? Or is it just for the next year, we're seeing Israel kill as many people as it wants?
It's an interesting question, because there's always a difference between the Arab people, right? The population of the Arab nations and their leaders. Right. There's a complete disconnect there. And, when we talk about a dictatorship or a monarchy or whatever, you look no further than the Gulf, look no further than Jordan, look no further than Egypt, right? These are the Arab allies that when the people protest against the genocide in Gaza, they get repressed. They get, the police are sent to disperse. If they gather outside the Israeli embassy, they get beaten up. So I think that's this is like on the micro level, right? This is the street level, and that reflects itself on the macro, right? When you have these summits in which Saudi Arabia keeps talking about the two-state solution with the 1967 borders, and like this is the only way we're going to normalize. And like of course, you have someone like Syria that has been, the target of a U.S.-Israeli war for the past 11, 12 years at this point. Destroyed their territory, broken into pieces, controlled by different powers. And this is going to be the country, this is going to be the leadership that in the end is going to speak the truth, the reality, right? Like we need to do something on the ground, because here with, signing papers and giving declarations, it's all nice, it's all good, I guess, for your own, internal peace. But other than that, it doesn't change, it doesn't reflect anything, because at this point, the only groups that are actually standing up and putting themselves on the line to stop this genocide are the what they're called the resistance axis, right? They are Hezbollah, they are Hamas, they are the other Palestinian factions, and Ansar Allah that this week launched a direct attack against the USS Lincoln in the Red Sea. Exactly, they launched a very imagine that, right? I saw this report from Axios yesterday, like some top level general, I guess like the Pentagon's, the person who's in charge of the purchases, right? Describing the Yemeni arsenal as something that he has never seen before, something that has him shocked. He said, he used these words, right? I am shocked at what Yemen is capable of doing. I have never seen anything like this, right? You're talking about a top-level general saying these things. And, kind of Yemen has been the equation that neither the U.S. nor Israel has been able to solve. And now with Trump coming in, I'm sure the solution is going to be, the hammer, as it often is.
I know,
And
but Saudi Arabia has been doing that for like 6 years. And
Saudi Arabia is desperate for this war to end, because they entered Yemen. Remember, when the Yemen war was announced, it was announced from the Rose Garden in Washington, D.C. by the Saudi ambassador. And they said, we're going to be in and out in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we're going to get rid of these rebels. It's been, what is this now, like 8-9 years at this point?
You know what's funny about that? The New York Times ran that story. And the New York Times pointed out that Obama wanted to get the JCPOA passed. And he was getting a huge amount of pushback from Saudi Arabia on it, because at the time, Saudi Arabia and Iran were at each other's throats.
Yes.
And so Obama basically greenlit Saudi Arabia attacking Yemen for Saudi Arabia not pitching a bitch about signing the JCPOA. And they told him, as you said, he was like, it'll be a few days. It'll be quick. And Obama, in the article, knew that this was a lie and this was not going to be quick, but he had no idea how bloody it was going to ultimately end up being. That stuff is fascinating to me. It's like the idea that Obama is given permission to bomb another country is astonishing. Like, when you think about it, you are allowing one country that is supposed to be sovereign to bomb another country that is supposed to be sovereign with your permission to do so.
Exactly.
That's astonishing.
Exactly. And Saudi Arabia kind of, after everything we've talked about in Gaza had already happened in Yemen, right? I mean, in a further period of time, in a larger period of time, and actually, like to a less intensity. Let's be honest here, because what's happening in Gaza is indescribable. So Yemen, was already suffering from sanctions, right? A complete blockade, naval, air, sea, naval, air, and land blockade. The constant bombing, the internal, like Yemen is also divided. Yemen is also controlled by like different factions like Syria. And after all of these, famine, the spread of cholera, like a really, really a difficult crisis that Yemen went through. And now they're on the other side launching attacks against the U.S. Navy in the Red Sea, in making, like 3-4 star generals go like, what the hell? What is this? I have never seen anything like this in my life. How are we going to solve it? I forget who it was, but some other U.S. official earlier this year, he said that the solution in Yemen is not going to come at the end of a gun. At the end of, it's going to come, it needs to come diplomatically. And that's the truth about the entire region. That's the truth about Gaza. That's the truth about the West Bank. That's the truth about, the Iraqi factions as well. Iraq is also heating up significantly because the Iraqi resistance factions are very steadfast in their attacks. They've been attacking Israel on a daily basis. The other day, they announced 5 attacks in one day, right?
Do you think, so Iran is saying, well, I guess there are 2 questions. One, I want to play this for you. So, the Biden administration pulled this political ploy where they said something to the effect, oh God, there are 3 questions. So they pull this political ploy. They effectively say, well, we're going to give you 30 days. Now, it just so happened, coincidentally, of course, that there were 30 days to the election also. And they said, well, you better allow 300 trucks in or else we're going to be angry and we may cut your funding. So they didn't do it, obviously, right? Nobody believed that they were going to do it. So this is Patel being questioned by reporters.
I know.
And they are getting in his ass on this issue because it's like, dude, you're the one that brought up 300 trucks. We didn't say that. You brought that up.
Yeah, exactly.
And he is trying to he's trying to explain how extermination and mass expulsion is not what's happening in Israel. He's trying to explain that, despite the fact that that's exactly what's taking place. This is Patel.
Take appropriate action.
Come on, Patel, talk.
Daphne, go ahead.
Thank you. Human Rights Watch said today that Israeli authorities have caused forced displacement of Palestinians in Gaza to an extent that constitutes war crimes and crimes against humanity. Have you seen anything that would make you agree with that assessment?
We have not. Certainly forced displacement is something that continues to be inconsistent with the principles that Secretary Blinken laid out in Tokyo. And again, I will let our partners in the IDF speak to the specific military tactics and operations, but it is wholly consistent and acceptable to ask civilians to evacuate a certain area while they are conducting certain military operations, and then for them to be able to go home. We have not seen.
I hate these people. Like, they're such liars and covering for a genocide. Like him, Matt Miller, these people are sociopaths.
You're very generous calling them people, Jamal, because this is beyond.
Well, and here's the truth of the matter, right? Like, he's like, well, they're just asking them to leave during the military exercises. That's the only reason they're asking them to leave. He knows damn well that that's not true. Palestinians would not be allowed to return to their homes in northern Gaza, says the IDF. Meaning, this article came out before, meaning he knows everything that this article says. He knows, he's fully aware what Israel is doing, and that they have already said, we are not allowing people to go back to the north. That is going to be our space. That's a love. That is new territory to which we're stealing. Same thing in Lebanon, southern Lebanon. Their objective, we're going to steal southern Lebanon.
Yes.
And we want the Lebanese government to give it over to us. Hell, we want the Lebanese army to even fight Hezbollah if we can get it to do that. And he knows that. And he's like, well, that is inconsistent with what we would wish and what, Blinken has laid out. So no, we don't see that. They will they'll go back to their homes after 70 years?
Exactly. No, this thing with these U.S. officials, and it kind of reminds me of Stockholm syndrome at this point, right? Like, and that is not to make them the victims, because they are not victims of anything. They are perpetrators. They are collaborators.
It makes me think of Nazi propaganda, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah.
If we're being bluntly honest, like, this is Goebbels would be perfectly okay with this. He would be like,
this is exactly right out of the playbook, the same playbook, right? The manufacturing consent, the dismissal, misinformation. And this thing about the aid trucks, right? Like, just to go back to your original point about what they were demanding, right? They issued this letter, Blinken and Austin, that is just essentially, this letter is like to save their assets, right? It's just so that, like, down the line, when they are brought for trial for their complicity in this genocide, they can point, right, and be like, hey, by the way, we did send this letter and we did say this. But it's completely toothless, it's completely harmless. It's, like, the date comes, and then the U.S. government says, no, actually, they have improved. They did. Right. They did improve. And then you have the UN and 8 different international organizations saying the aid deliveries in Gaza are actually worse than before the letter was issued. They have gone down. They talk about, I think it was 358 trucks per day that they wanted Israel to allow, right? You're talking, that is, I'm going to do some quick math for you, because the numbers are really where the truth lies here.
They were doing 30. And what the people say, he was like, they barely have 30. And the guy, and Patel, same guy, he was like, well, I'm not going to get into numbers.
Exactly. The numbers that you gave. We're not going to get into the numbers that you gave. Because, like, Israel and the U.S., the two of them, when they give these announcements about the aid to Gaza, they talk about millions of tons of aid, right? Like, we've allowed 40 million or 60 million or whatever many million of tons of aid, and it sounds like a lot, right? Like, of course, it's a lot. But then, like, you actually break down the numbers, and it's, when they say, for example, we have allowed 40 million pounds of aid, that would be
too many people.
No, like, that's divided by, the amount that the trucks can carry. That's about 1,300 trucks, because the trucks can carry about 30,000 pounds.
I see.
In average. So you're talking about 1,333 trucks when you're talking about 40 million pounds of aid. That's enough to feed the population of Gaza for 2 days. For 2 days.
Wow.
So when they talk about, we delivered these many million whatever, they're talking about just days, because that's the figure they don't give you. Because before 7 October of 2023, the UN had already determined, the World Food Program had already determined that Gaza, under the blockade that it lived in, needed 500 trucks of aid per day. Per day, 500 trucks to sustain the population. This is before the war. Right? So when the U.S. comes in and says, oh, we need you to deliver at least 350 trucks of aid per day, They're talking about a 150 truck deficit already since before October 7th. It's not enough. It's never going to be enough. It needs to be just a complete flow of aid.
This is the thing, right? When Democrats would say, yeah, but Trump is going to be worse. And I remember, I keep looking at it saying, how? How could he be worse in this situation? Like, Joe Biden has given him any and everything that he wanted, meaning Netanyahu. He's literally given him a blank check. And even if Netanyahu would have said, we're annexing the West Bank, I don't believe for one moment that Joe Biden would have said anything about it at all. And so it's like and then they're like, Donald Trump is going to remove the restraints that Joe Biden put on the weapons. What restraints? What restraints? Like, Joe Biden is as far right on this issue than you could be. And maybe if there's a little bit of daylight left that Trump may get, it's negligible. It really is. I mean, maybe you don't get the grumbling behind the scenes that you get with Joe Biden, but all things being equal, people like Blinken, people like Amos Hochstein, people like Matt Miller, people like Patel, all of these people are sociopaths. And they are backing, covering a genocide in real terms and lying about it all the way through. The idea, Patel knows they're being starved. He knows, John Kirby knows those people are being starved. And yet, he would come out and make a statement like that. Well, starvation is inconsistent with our policies in Israel, and that is not what Blinken has said. It's just outrageous.
It's beyond, like the difference between Biden and Trump in the genocide. I mean, internally, that's for the U.S. population to decide. But in terms of foreign policy and in terms of support for Israel, you're just talking about, the form, the superficial, right. Like the way that they express themselves and what they say, right? You're going to have a Trump White House that is going to be very straightforward, right? At the very least, you're not going to get the bullshit. You're not going to get the Patel being like, well, we are very concerned or whatever. They're going to be like, because these are human animals.
Yeah,
and they need to be killed, and Israel has the right.
That's what we're here for. We're going to kill the terrorists. That's what we're here
for.
Exactly.
There's just going to be more straightforward. That's it. That's the difference. Because what restraints? You're completely right there, Jamal. What restraints have there been?
Yeah.
In August, I think they were talking already about a 50,000 pound shipments of bombs that had reached Israel. The figures are just staggering. The jet fuel, the parts. Israel is flying F-35s to bomb Gaza and Lebanon, not because they need the technology of an F-35. It's because they want to have all of their planes active at, constantly running just so that they can keep up the pace of the bombing. And to keep up the pace of the bombing, they need to keep up the deliveries of jet fuel. They need to keep up the deliveries of the repairs, right? Because you're talking about very advanced planes. So the parts are not just coming from the US, they're coming from Japan. They're coming from Germany. They're coming from, bases. They're coming from all over the world. They just, all come to Israel. And so this goes so far beyond, Blinken and Miller and Patel and whoever else. This goes into, the Western governments. This goes into NATO. This goes into the G7. This goes into their allies. This goes into the Arab nations, right? Like a few weeks ago, you had Egypt. Egypt allowed the docking of a ship that was carrying explosives for Israel. After it was turned away by several European nations, Egypt opens the port of Alexandria. Egypt allows an Israeli warship to cross the Suez Canal flying the Israeli flag.
That's a really good point. Explain that to us. So is it just Israel gets money from the U.S., and so it's subservient? Is there some other political motive in mind for Israel? I mean, for Egypt to be that obsequious to this kind of power structure? It just seems like it's outlandish. I can't even believe that the Egyptian public will be okay with this.
No, of course they're not, and but I don't know at this point, honestly, because it's been so long, right? Like it's been happening so constantly. As far as, a nation like Egypt or Jordan or the Saudis, etc., there was this report recently that apparently in the days after October 7th, when Blinken, his first of, 11, 12 failed trips to the region, he met with like all of the leaders, and all of them said, we want Israel to defeat Hamas. We want Israel to defeat and get rid of Hamas. Why? Because they have already hitched their boat, right, or their horse to the U.S., to Israel, to normalization. Egypt has normalized relationships since the 1990s, if I'm not mistaken. Jordan, the first Arab country to normalize ties. You have, like the others that have also signed the normalization agreements. They don't want to go back. They don't want that. They prefer the help of the United States. Why? Right. Because they are threatened by Iran, in particular the Gulf countries, right? They are threatened by Iran. They could sign and they could make friends, but they are always going to be threatened by Iran because there's always going to exist that, Iran is a Shiite majority nation. Well, most
I know,
of
but it
these other
seems like
nations are
that this is bringing together Shia and Sunni.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I know that there's a conflict there, right? But it seems like the BRICS, in the way that structure, okay, I'm saying this poorly. Look, it looks like the global majority, the BRICS countries specifically, have decided strategically that peace is a weapon, and that the US uses chaos around the globe in order to destabilize various governments, whether it's Taiwan, whether it's Ukraine, whether it was Hong Kong when it was trying to go after China. It's a way that it goes after and undercuts countries. The MEK in Iran, they would love to try to get their hands on them or try to get them to be more of a political force. China and Russia seems to have come on this thing of, okay, so we want to bring these countries together. So Saudi Arabia and Iran, you guys are going to be together, especially if both of us are going to be in BRICS. China and India, we're going to get rid of the hostilities between us, especially if both of us are going to be in BRICS. And even going with this notion of we're sovereign countries, we're not going to invade one another, we're not going to sanction one another, meaning they seem to have taken a different tact in regards to the way they're trying to organize the world. Iran and Saudi Arabia just so happen to be under that umbrella. And again, they're having military exercises at this point. So it seems that Israel has somehow alienated even that group between themselves. I guess my thought is, it doesn't seem like Iran and Saudi Arabia is that much of an issue currently in the context of what is happening in Israel. And Donald Trump, who the first time around was able to work with Saudi Arabia very closely and was against Iran fully, well, the world is different. And correct me if I'm wrong on this. Saudi Arabia, Iran, the Muslim countries at this point seem to be far more organized than they were when Trump was in office that time around, when he was trying to pass the Abraham Accords. All of them are angry at Israel right now. I know Jordan is obsequious, fair enough. And as you pointed out, Egypt has allowed that ship to go through. But it seems like they're far more united in the things that they're saying. I mean, is the things that they're saying purely for public consumption, or is there a reality behind it?
I think there's you're talking about politicians at the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
you're not talking about like revolutionary leaders or something or other, right? Like these are people who are good. They speak for the cameras. So I would always take what they say with a grain of salt.
Right, yeah.
But the thing with BRICS, the thing with the Saudi-Iran rapprochement, which was brokered by China, right? Remember,
it was.
I feel like particularly in the case of Saudi Arabia, they kind of, and the UAE as well, they kind of want to keep their eggs in different baskets, right? They don't want to have to just compete. Saudi Arabia hasn't officially joined the BRICS. They haven't. It's been like a year.
That's true. That is true.
So
that is true.
And then you had, and just to speak for the BRICS, even though I'm going a bit far at this point, but just to give you an idea. Look at what happened last month in the summit when Brazil, out of nowhere, just says no to Venezuela, right? Venezuela is about to join the BRICS. And Brazil, the foreign minister of Brazil comes in with a last-minute message and says no to Venezuela, we veto, for absolutely no reason, right? But then you look deeper, and you have to realize that we can talk about multipolarity and, post-hegemon world as much as we want. But there's always going to be pushback. They're always going to fight back. And, right now in the BRICS, for example, you have Saudi Arabia, one foot in, one foot out. You have, you have U.S. allies. You still have U.S. allies. Like these people aren't, you're not talking about countries that are, have broken with the West, right? You're not talking about North Korea and Nicaragua.
They want to keep a hand in both worlds. Like,
Yeah,
so they don't want to start some kind of economic war where they're like, I'm siding with this group over the other. They want to be able to do both. And I
So I
get
think
that.
that there is one thing in particular about the Muslim nations in West Asia in particular, and is that I don't think any of them want the war to actually, like this to become a full-blown,
Right.
Iran, Israel, US war that involves everyone. They don't want that. There's, war is profitable for a small group of people.
Right.
It's not profitable for everyone.
Well, yeah, I don't think they want war. And I guess that's kind of my point. The thing that they seem to agree on is we, A, are pissed off at Israel. B, don't want this to expand into a regional conflict. Do you think Iran is going to go through with True Promise 3? I mean, because they're threatening it big time. And Morandi has been all over basically saying, we're going to hit him, it's going to hurt. I mean, I get the sense that Russia is counseling calm on some level, especially considering they are interested in doing BRICS. They're interested in this kind of economic thing and getting this money thing off the ground. So maybe they're not necessarily all that involved or want it, but it seems like Iran is very adamant that they're going to strike. Now, I am terrified of what this looks like because the reality of it is, A, Russia seems to be coming up with a security arrangement and agreement with Iran. So there's that. Let's put a pin in that. Trump is coming in and has a hard-on to go after Iran right off the bat. So there's that. And the lunatics that he's put into the administration are effectively hawks, full on. If there's a situation where there's a war, I fully believe that Trump would probably join in on that war.
Oh, 100%.
And considering that they may have a security agreement with Russia at that point, we're talking about nuclear nations, once again, with their proxies going at one another. Like, this is like terrifying. This can go extraordinarily bad. The one bright spot is Elon Musk apparently met behind the scenes with a Iranian foreign minister.
UN ambassador,
What do you think of that, by the way?
to Iran.
Yeah, do you give any credence to that? I mean, the people said that the meeting went well and saying they were trying to de-escalate. I don't know what that de-escalation would look like. I don't know if Donald Trump is trying to come up with his own version of the JCPOA.
My God. Yeah, I don't know.
I know, right? I mean, look,
Musk.
Trump wants deals. And if he can get a deal, he'll run with it. That's the catch with him. That's not true with Democrats. So I don't know. Give me a take on that, though. Do you think there's what do you think is going on with that? And I know you don't have a crystal ball. I'm just...
No, but like you just need to look at the facts, right? Like Trump has stacked his cabinet with Iran hawks, from top to bottom. From like all of these people would love nothing more than to spark a war with Iran. So I think there's a bit of a spoiler already there. Trump was the one who pulled out of the JCPOA, of the Iran nuclear deal. Trump is the one that ordered the killing of Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad, the IRGC commander. Trump is the one, Trump has not been friendly to Iran in his first administration, so there's no reason to think he's going to be friendly now. Especially, remember that they were blaming Iran for the assassination attempts, right? Like the Democrats were saying, the Democratic government, right, was saying
it's trying to kill Trump.
Iran is trying to kill Trump.
The Justice Department put out indictments for people trying to murder Trump.
Which is like, why would Iran do that? Like Iran has been, as you're saying, like they're threatening the True Promise 3.
Yeah.
Iran has been so careful in the way that it actually enters this conflict in their attacks against Israel, in their attacks against U.S. bases, right? Again, when they kill Soleimani, when the Trump orders the assassination of Soleimani, Iran retaliates. They hit a base in Syria very heavily, or it was maybe a base in Iraq, but they give them a heads up. Right? They give them a heads up. Same happened with the first True Promise, and maybe to some extent the second one as well. So Iran has been very careful. So why the hell would they all of a sudden, during the U.S. election, be like, "Oh, we're gonna kill Donald Trump"?
Oh, it's weird. That stuff is intel. Honestly, that's like the CIA screwing around.
But it's like this is what's out there. This is like what the media is talking about. This is how it's being portrayed. And so you have the cabinet, right, full of Iran hawks. You have these reports. There was a report this week that the Trump officials are already talking about instigating regime change in Iran. What does that mean? Probably what you were saying, the MEK or the Kurdish separatists, or just civil war as they often do. And And in Iran, what you need to understand as far as what's coming is that there's essentially two leaderships, right? You have the president, who is in charge of essentially all the political topics, economic as well. And you have the supreme leader. You have, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who is in charge of the military.
Right.
He is the one who decides. He's the one who calls the shots in these terms. And, yesterday, the president, Pezeshkian, he was talking to the head of the UN nuclear agency, right? And he's talking about that Iran is willing, has a willingness to resolve any issues, any concerns, like essentially Iran saying, like, we don't have nuclear weapons, come and look, we don't have them.
Right.
So stop with that shit. And the other guy, Khamenei, I'm sorry, no, not Khamenei, I'm sorry, the head of the IRGC, General Salami, on the same day he gives a speech, and it's fiery. It's fiery against Israel. It's against, like he says, like we are gonna end the Zionist state, and we, don't care if the US comes in. They have nothing on us. It's just, like one statement after the other. So you can you already see like kind of like the difference in which inside Iran, in which there is a calculus. The Iranians have, if anything else, the Iranians have proven to be very, very cold in their calculations and in their strategy, right? And we have seen it since October 7th. They are being, that's, to the point that they are called slow or uninvolved, or like, where is Iran? Why it has... I mean, I'm not here to excuse anyone. The Israelis have their strategy, which can only be described as a mad dog strategy. The Iranians have their own strategy, like the Yemenis and the Lebanese and et cetera, et cetera. They each have their own strategy. And so we will have to see, because I do think there's going to be a retaliation, right? A retaliation from Iran. There has to be.
Well, they keep saying it. They keep boosting it.
And I think, just to finish my thought, is that the calculations right now have a lot to do with the incoming U.S. government. Because the calculations before True Promise 2, they were in relation to giving time for a ceasefire in Gaza, and that failed. So now I think that has switched. And now you have Tehran kind of being like, maybe we're willing to not hit them as hard as we can, but what do we get in return?
I see. Interesting. So I want to move on to another one, right? So this came out, I think this was yesterday. Now, it was reported like a year ago that Egypt had given Israel forewarning that Hamas was planning Al-Aqsa flood. And Netanyahu, apparently for the last, year, has been putting out misinformation, basically creating fake documents in order to go after intelligence officials, trying to blame them and keep the blame off of himself. So this document comes out. IDF investigation. Hours before the surprise attack, the prime minister's office was updated with extensive intelligence information. The evidence of the investigation contradicts the version of Netanyahu's people, according to which the Bureau was not updated on signs from the Strip. Colonel S., the intelligence officer at the Bureau, received news about 2 o'clock, I guess it's 2 a.m., including alarming indications. This is the same officer about whom there was concern that senior officials were in possession of the documentation embarrassing the prime minister's office. It says the prime minister does not deny, or his office did not deny, but claim and emphasize that the prime minister himself received the report only at 6:29. I guess this is a translation from an Israeli document.
Yes,
but I guess they're pointing out they knew about it. Netanyahu lied about it, and then created fake documents in order to castigate the intelligence officials in Israel in order to keep blame away from himself on this issue. What do we know about this, by the way? Because again, this is the second time that it's come out that they knew about it, but this is the first report saying, no, they knew hours before the attack took place.
From what has actually come out about this investigation, because this is a criminal investigation into the office of Benjamin Netanyahu that is in particularly looking at tampering, at the tampering of the minutes of those phone calls. The phone calls we're talking about that Netanyahu got in the morning, that his chief of staff tried to blackmail an army officer to manipulate, to tamper with the times of those phone calls, right? The reason why is still unclear, right? As you're saying, there's some that say, that it has to do with with this idea that they had actual advance warning and they tried to pin the blame somewhere else. Others have actually are talking more about the International Criminal Court, the arrest warrants, that this is an attempt to manipulate the official information to kind of help in the defense, the eventual defense of Benjamin Netanyahu.
I see.
Yeah.
But come on, Israel doesn't care about the ICC, not in real terms. I mean, can you really foresee a situation?
I mean,
where
Benjamin Netanyahu is not going to be prime minister forever, You always need to keep that in mind. Yeah.
But I don't think he's going to go to any of those countries that would even dare arrest him, though.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, they don't care.
I would love if they did.
It's apparent, like the U.S. doesn't care. They don't care. Like the
US
United
doesn't care
States has a law that allows them to invade The Hague, that allows them to send troops into the Netherlands. They have a law. If a U.S. soldier or an ally is prosecuted or even questioned,
that would include Israel.
Exactly. So, I guess that tells you the whole story right there. But that doesn't mean, because there's one thing, in all of these, I'm going to call them conspiracy theories because they haven't been proven, that Israel actually knew beforehand of Al-Aqsa flood and they just let it happen.
Right.
There's one problem with that idea, and is that if they had known, I think the response that they gave to they would have had more control of the narrative, is what I'm trying to get at. They would have shown more control of the narrative, because if there's one thing that Israel and the Zionist lobby has been very good at, is controlling the narrative, is controlling the media.
Just to be clear, I don't believe that they knew in advance. No, that's not true. I think it was kind of like 9/11. Like, it's like, okay, information is up. Because even like when we've had John on and he talks about like the way intelligence comes in, and you get these like pieces of information. And it's kind of like in hindsight where you could put the story together and say, oh, see, the information was there. It was right here. But really, when it's happening in real terms, it's not really that clear-cut, straightforward data that can allow you to make a decision. I strongly suspect that they probably did get some kind of heads up about it, but they thought, these animals can't put together an attack like this. These animals have never hit us like this, so we're not concerned about these animals hitting us. I bet it was that.
I think so too. I think it was complete hubris. I think because there's two things that were happening there at that point. With the Israeli occupation. One of them was they had become almost entirely focused on the West Bank.
Right.
Like the West Bank was the thing that they were, 100% looking at, and by extension of that, they had kind of discounted Hamas entirely. And you can see this in the reports, Hamas, they saw it as weak, and they saw it, as you were saying, these human animals cannot do anything against us. And on top of that, this is always worth mentioning, because, the Palestinian people, just like the Lebanese or just like anywhere else, they're not a monolith, right? They're not like all of them in line. They were protesting against Hamas in the months before October 7th. They were unhappy with the rule of Hamas. Obviously, a rule that cannot, just like any country under sanctions, you cannot just like talk about the government without talking about the sanctions. You cannot talk about Hamas rule without talking about the 20-year blockade that the Gaza Strip had been under. But still, discontent on the streets. And this is, kind of like what was happening beforehand, before October the 7th, where, Hamas just kind of kicks the table over and everything changes, not just in occupied Palestine, but across the entire region and even the world. They changed the world that day. Yeah. So I think there was a lot of hubris. I think there was a lot of disinterest as well. And if there was, an actual, we know what's going to happen and we're just not going to do anything, it had more to do with what's happening now. It was like they saw it as, if this happened, then it was seen in Tel Aviv as an opportunity to finally flatten Gaza, to finally take control of Gaza, and to, as Jared Kushner said, this is very valuable beachfront property.
Yeah, they get their greater Israel is what they want. I mean, look, for whatever amount of Netanyahu's behavior has to do with this idea of staying out of jail, I think a large part of it too is this idea of his own historical recollection, like him thinking of himself in historical terms. Like, I'm the man that gets us greater Israel. I'm the man that expands the borders of Israel. I think he's thinking of himself in these terms, these grandiose terms. I mean, from my point of view, though, he has put Israel in an existential situation. Like, you know, they are not safer than they were on October 6th.
Not at all.
And, you know, they're still fighting Hamas. They're stuck, bogged down in Lebanon. They can murder as many Lebanese women and children as they want. At the end of the day, that is not the way to win a war. Not really. I mean, the US killed all of those people in Vietnam. We still lost the war. And so it's like they're, according to his war aims, we want to be able to move settlers back to the north. We want to be able to be have this kind of open air ghetto without being able to be attacked. This was their war aims, and to create some level of deterrence to Iran. Okay, well, for one, you didn't create deterrence to Iran. They're about to hit you. And at this point, it's very clear that your air defense can't stop them. B, you're still fighting Hezbollah, and they're still firing missiles into the north. Those people cannot go back to the north at this point.
There's more displacement, yeah.
Right, there's more displacement. The soldiers are getting killed. I mean, this was something that Gallant admitted to, basically saying we've had losses on the battlefield and we need to effectively raise more troops. And the other part that a lot of people don't really even talk about, the economy of Israel. Like, how can an economy function under these terms? You have all of these Palestinians who were basically doing the labor. Okay, well, that's off the table. You got like 1 million people to leave. Okay, they may not ever come back. Like, your economy has hit the skids on top of everything else. And I guess my question would be, how long can they maintain this? And is it just, well, as long as the U.S. keeps giving them money, they can just keep going on in perpetuity? Is that where we are? And this could be the last question. We've hit to the clock.
I think, I think so. I think actually, you know, like a friend of mine told me something that is kind of like gets to the heart of this issue the other day. And he just said, you know, like, do you think the Zionist lobby is ever going to run out of money?
Oh,
they're not. They're not going to run out of money. And look at, you know, like the United States is just like giving them blank checks, like so much money. What is it at this point? Like around 50 billion since 7 October that has been given to Israel on top of the billions that they get every single year already, right? It's like $3.8 billion that they get every year. So yes, the Israeli economy is being hammered. The North is under a lot of pressure. You know, the city of Haifa is essentially being deserted as we speak. The attacks from Hezbollah are reaching Tel Aviv. They are reaching beyond Tel Aviv. The soldiers, the losses, the attempts at drafting the ultra-Orthodox, which keep failing. They sent new recruitment orders today. Be sure this is not going to go anywhere. The contraction, you know, today I saw that for 2024, the Israeli economy is going to have a growth of 0%. Next year, I think they're expected to have a growth of like 0.3%. But at the end of the day, Israel can get hammered by Iran, by Lebanon, by Yemen. But the day after this war ends, it's going to be Lebanon and Iran and Yemen and Gaza and the West Bank that are going to be in rubble for who knows how long. But Israel is going to get all of the money in the world to rebuild. They're going to get, you know, you're going to have the IMF, the World Bank, everyone come in, you know, like with just bundles of money for the poor Israelis who have been, you know, suffering at the hands of the human animals.
And you don't think there's and you don't think there's any propensity at all for those things? Like, it just blows me away. And I understand it, right? It's kind of like in America. Just because they're Muslims doesn't necessarily mean that human beings are different. Leadership is very different than what the public wants, or sometimes what the public even thinks. And they may mouth things, but in real terms, the way they act is going to be different. It is wild to me to see them give those speeches, fire and brimstone, and then be completely obsequious to the U.S. and Israeli interests. And I'm looking at the King of Jordan, by the way, who does that stuff, who would give these heavy speeches and then open their airwaves for Israel to fly their jets through. There has to be a certain amount of blood that these people will be too much for them. Or maybe not. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on this.
You would hope.
Yeah.
You would hope, Jamal. But honestly, at this point, you know, just go like anyone, you know, anyone who's listening right now, just read, you know, the latest, just from the past 12 hours, what's been happening in Gaza, just from the past 6 hours, what's been happening in Lebanon, then extrapolate that, you know, to a year. It's like I don't know. I don't know about this. The leadership in particular, I don't see it anymore, right? Because I feel like that red line, whatever it may have been, it was passed a while ago.
Yeah. Esteban, man, this is, to call it heartbreaking is an understatement. And I have to be honest, it is, I want to use the term mind blowing, but the term doesn't really do it service. I can't believe that our government is paying for this. Like, I just can't reconcile that. And then for them
your
to
taxpayer funds, the money you pay for taxes.
Over 70% of it is being paid by us. And then to have a political campaign where the Democrat looks people in the face and say, hey, I know that we have a policy that is paying for the killing of your family members and people who look like you, but Donald Trump is horrible, so I need you to vote for us.
Yeah, he's worse. He's worse. How is he worse? When you're committing a genocide, how can the other person be worse?
It's like, well, Trump is not going to grumble behind the scenes when he's giving weapons and money to Israel to kill.
Exactly. At least, honestly, at this point, at least he's going to be honest about it, which is the least you can expect from a U.S. politician at this point.
Man, I appreciate this.
For the most, I guess.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Jamal.
No, I appreciate you joining me anytime to have this conversation. It just sucks. And it kills me that my government is paying for this nonsense. And look, it's a genocide. And it's like, for whatever reason, because it's Arabs or Muslims, it's okay. Yeah. And that's the part that kills me more than anything else. It's this human quality of it where it's like, okay, well, these people matter less. And it's like, no, that's not true. That's not what we think. That's not our liberal values. It's like, dude, they matter less. Look at what you're doing. Look at what you're allowing.
Exactly.
It's outrageous.
No,
Esteban Carrillo. He is a Beirut-based Ecuadorian journalist and current editor for The Cradle. He was previously with Sir English. Esteban, where can people find you, man?
Well, they can find my work at The Cradle Media on social platforms, and they can find my own personal X account, Esteban Carlop, under the. You can probably see it under my name. So yeah, thank you for having me, Jamal. Thank you for everyone who joined, and we'll be talking soon.
Thank you for joining me, man. You have a good one. Okay, have a good weekend. All right, Esteban Carrillo. What's got that roll in that R? Guys, we have come to the end of the road. Not forever, just for now. Why do Black women vote Democrat? Black women vote Democrat for the same reason that Black people vote Democrat. We had a racist country. And it just so happened that the Democratic Party reached out to the African-American community, in which case a handshake was made. White folks jumped into the Republican Party, or let's say the racists jumped into the Republican Party. The Dixiecrats that used to be Democrats became Republicans. And so African Americans in our mind have a very clear understanding that the monsters are in the other party. We've had that understanding going back for the last 50 years, if not more. That is almost genetic, because informally and almost, like breath to air, it's not necessarily spoken, but it's there nonetheless. When your family members vote, when your family members talk, when your family members talk about electoral politics or something like that, or they take you to the polls for the first time, it becomes very clear that African Americans vote in one specific direction: Democrat. When I was younger, you didn't even know what the Democrat was. You didn't know what he was doing. No clue. You just voted Democrat. It was just understood. That's the way you voted when you went to the polls. There was no other person to vote for. You had one guy. The monsters are in the other party. And you vote for a particular candidate, or the relevance and legitimacy of the candidate that a Black person is going to vote for is determined by whether or not they can keep the monsters at bay. The monsters being the people in the Republican Party. It's not that all of them are that way, but if you're talking about the base, there's a base that is that way. Hence, Black folks have a tendency to vote Democrat. That is beginning to change. And it's mainly beginning to change because Black folks have realized, wait a minute, you're getting 90% of my vote and I have nothing to show for this? It's that part. It's this notion that they're taking advantage because African Americans feel like they're stuck with one group. And so if you're the Democratic Party, and from your point of view, well, they believe the monsters are in the other party, which means this is a captive audience. They're going to vote for me, and they're not going to vote for the other group. So what do I have to give them? Why do I have to give them anything? They have nowhere else to go. It's that argument, the same argument that's being used often as progressives. We're going to reach out to Republicans, and we're going to reach out to Republicans because what are the progressives going to do? They have nowhere else to go. However, when you get to the point where it is so negligible, the difference, or when it is so clearly a certain level of arrogance and entitlement, then it's a turnoff. It alienates. And when you go election cycle after election cycle after election cycle, and it comes across in one cycle after the next that, okay, they're just taking this for granted. They're not offering anything. They don't really mean or stand for anything. And I got to be honest, it has been to the detriment of the Democratic Party. Fact of the matter is, if the Democratic Party has a certain level of standards where they say, nothing below this point, go below this point, you don't get my vote. I don't care who's on the other side. Satan himself can be on the other side. If you go below this line, you will lose. Test me. If it was that, where they know going into that race, there's a certain bar that we can't go past, you would have a much better chance of having a much better candidate running in those races. But year after year after year, it's blue no matter who. And no matter who means, if it has a heartbeat, they'll get my vote. That has not been to the betterment of the Democratic Party. It has led to a race to the bottom where you got one worse candidate after the next. For God's sake, Joe Biden is your president. Joe Biden is so out of his mind that they couldn't even prosecute him for charges because they said he was out of his goddamn mind. That is our president. That guy's a Democrat. They were defending that particular Joe Biden when it was clear for over a year that he was out of his mind. And one Democrat after the next will stand up, look you in the face, and lie to you straight to your face. Pro-war, pro-censorship, pro-genocide. Democratic Party. That's what they stand for. So you start to get more and more people who recognize that and started asking basic questions of like, okay, well, why am I voting for you? Why am I getting out the house to do this? What is the vision? What is it that you want to accomplish? I know your tagline and propaganda that you're living off going back from FDR, but in real terms, what is it? And the reality of it is, I don't even know what it is. Short of war, censorship, arrogance, hubris, delusion, in many respects, this idea that you represent something, that you are willing to go for the mat or to the mat for the American worker, that is not there. I'm sorry. Whether it was there at all at one point, probably. Is it there now? Oh, absolutely not. This is an elitist party that reached out to moderate Republicans and ignored their base. They ignored their base because all things being equal, they hate their base. They fought harder against Bernie Sanders than they did against any other Republican because from their point of view, Sanders would have taken the party. And what they know is the same way that Trump supporters have cannibalized the Republican Party, they do not want that to happen to them because they know for themselves that they cannibalize the New Deal Democrats in order to become the third way Democrats that they are now. They fight Sanders that hard because they're trying to preserve their own, I guess, way of things. But what happens when that way of things doesn't work anymore? Meaning you lost a man that was a felon, a convicted sexual abuser that tried to overthrow the government of the United States, that was shot once, nearly shot twice, but they caught the guy in advance, that was under federal indictments even when he won. You call that man Hitler? You call him a fascist? You said he was an embarrassment? You said he had no business being behind the seal of the presidency? You said he was hanging out with dictators, palling around with dictators? You said he was racist, bigoted, all that stuff. And then you lost to that guy. You lost to that guy. electoral votes and the popular vote. And instead of Democrats having a come to Jesus moment of, oh my God, we spent $1 billion and lost, they come up with Kamala Harris was flawless, and America is just a racist country that would vote for a sexual abuser, a white man. That's what it is. They're just racist. That's it. Racist and sexist. No accountability in the lease. No taking responsibility for losing $1 billion in the lease. No appraisal of what they represent in the context of what they say they represent and what the American public wants. They don't seem to care. They seem to expect and believe that minorities are supposed to owe them their vote as opposed to the candidate going out and get that vote. It is a bizarre party. And honest to God, I agree with Dr. Wilmer Leon. I have no idea where they go after this. There's no coalition. There's nobody that loves them. They are just fractured into something. I would imagine they're going to be in the wilderness. Who knows what they come back with when they come out of the cold. So I'll leave it at that. Guys, you have a fantastic day. My name is once again Jamal Thomas. Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Like it, share it, subscribe to it, hit the notification bell, and I will see you at least Monday morning. But I pop in at all times of the day, so you probably see me sometime today. You guys have a fantastic day. Jamal Thomas Morning Show. Signing off. Wait just a second. Wait, what's this? Where is it? Oh, right here. DC, I don't agree with what he is saying about Trump, but I get his point. You may want him to shut up. Really? Yeah, man, you can disagree with me. It's not an echo chamber. You can disagree with me. It's not going to hurt my feelings. It is what it is. But I am right. You guys have a good one. I'll see you all on Monday.